Yeah.
Recording in
Half
progress.
an hour, right?
Yep.
Okay, good.
You're recording.
All right. All right, good evening. Thank you for attending the regular meeting of the City Council. We're starting at 5 o'clock today because we got a lot of stuff to do today, so thanks for coming early. And I will do that.
That's
So
to wake the
let's,
council.
what's that?
That's to wake up the council.
Yeah, I know, that's the way it goes on. Okay, you can join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
One nation, under God,
Indivisible with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Letts,
Here.
Council President McDougall,
Here.
Councilor Breeden,
present and accounted for.
Councilor Ross,
Present.
Councilor Pellerin.
Here. All right, thank you. We're going to start with visitor communication today. Do we have any visitor communication?
Approval of agenda.
Oh, I'm still getting used to this, sorry.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now, visitor communication.
I have one from Mark Dixon.
Dickens? Okay.
Dickens.
Yep. There you go.
Mark Dickens, 133 East Black Crater Avenue. I was here, stood here about 2 weeks ago, exactly, and I extended a invitation for somebody from the city to contact me regarding this dispute that I've had now for almost 9 years with Deschutes County Community Development Code Enforcement. I'm disappointed that nobody has taken me up on that offer. The City of Sisters has a responsibility and a legal obligation to help in resolving this dispute and prevent any further harm. If the city fails to do so, I will be forced, as I've mentioned before, to file legal action where I intend to not only fully expose this outrageous and malicious abuse by the Code Enforcement Division of the county and its building official, Randy Scheid. I will file this action in federal court, and I will seek compensatory and punitive damages against the county and the City of Sisters. I don't know how many more times I'm going to have to say this. The City of Sisters just recently, through staff, informed me that my house is not considered a house or a dwelling unit despite full approval granted in April of 2008, where it clearly says that it's a living quarters above the garage that was replacing an existing cottage that had been on the property since the 1960s. I find it amazing and coincidental that within a month or so of me very publicly criticizing the county at Board of Commissioners meetings, your city manager was there, he can attest to this, that somebody has made this determination, either the city or the assessor's office, that my house is not even a legal house. This is just becoming more ridiculous and more absurd. This revelation comes just, as I mentioned, a month after criticizing the county. The house has been there now for 15 years. It was finalized in 2009 with an existing residence that's been there for over 50 years. And the property has had continuous residential ongoing use of two separate dwelling units since the 1960s. In about 2019, when Scott Woodford took over from Patrick Davenport, I met with him and submitted all my documentation, and it was reviewed here by the city, and there was found to be no violations of any zoning ordinances or code ordinances by the City of Sisters. So again, how is it that now 6 years later, your staff is telling me that the house that I've lived in is not even a legal residence? One of the most transparent and frankly pathetic recent actions by the county, is this 7-page legal agreement that the county now wants me to enter into after reneging on numerous prior agreements. This is nothing more than an attempt for the county to absolve itself from any liability. And what's interesting is it's authored by the very same code enforcement hearings officer, Stephanie Marshall, who granted in favor of the county ruling against me that allowed them to put liens on my property, despite the fact that the county was in possession of drawings done by an architect and an engineer showing that my house was in full compliance, code compliance. They went ahead and initiated these code enforcements. So what they're trying to do is cover their butt. The code enforcement officer, hearings officer, after years of giving these favorable rulings, was then hired as a legal attorney in the legal department by Deschutes County. Again, just what a coincidence. This is just another example of them trying to cover up what they've done and validate their actions. If you want some further proof of this arbitrary, malicious, and retaliatory behavior by the county code enforcement, I suggest you speak to John Shepard, one of our neighbors down here, and listen to his story, what he had to go through. This is just a complete abuse of the code. We all know and we've seen here how the code is applied in the city, in the county, and it's not done in a uniform manner. The last thing I want to say, and I want to remind the city here, and this is something you're going to have your own conversation. Gross negligence in a legal context means serious lack of care, attention that rises above ordinary negligence, demonstrating a conscious disregard for the safety or the rights of others. It's essentially a failure to exercise even the slightest care or diligence, often leading to significant harm. I would really encourage somebody from the city to take me up on my offer and meet with me and sit down and let me show you all the documents and meet with me in a productive manner. Coming in here and talking like this for 3 minutes is not the way to resolve this. But if this is not done, I will file legal action, and it's going to be very embarrassing when everybody involved, after my attorney completes discovery, gets deposed, and you're going to have to explain why you weren't even willing to meet with me. So show some good faith, do not abrogate your responsibility, and let's resolve this. Thank you.
Jordan, did you have something, were you going to address this later tonight?
Yeah, during the response to the public comments, or?
Yeah, you don't have to do it right now, but
Okay.
we usually have been trying to respond to people's comments the week after in our meetings, since we can't have a back and forth at this moment. So if you want to stay, I think you might have some comments in regards to this issue since you brought it up last week. All right, thank you. Are there any
We
other
could be in contact
comments?
later, too.
Person, if you are on Zoom and would like to participate in visitor communication, please raise your hand. I see none.
All right, thank you. All right, next up, we have 3 presentations coming up, which is great. Our first one will be on Dark Sky Week Proclamation. And that's Scott Woodford.
Members of the community that have been involved with this effort, if they wouldn't mind coming up, I'd like to acknowledge their efforts as part of this celebration of International Dark Skies Week, which is April 21st through the 28th. And so this celebration of our certification as a dark sky community, International Dark Sky Community, which we received back in January, was the culmination of many years of citizen involvement and advocacy for this important issue, and really got us to where we are now as one of 50 certified communities in the world. Sisters is one of those. So pretty cool achievement, and this is the week that we are here to honor that and to celebrate that. And so I want to introduce Rima Givet, who's a local science teacher and longtime advocate, Noah Bartels, Barbara, how do you pronounce your name? Beja?
Scott, can you do that into the microphone?
And I can't look at it. Barbara Bejcek, and Scott Humpert, and of course, Ron Thorkeldson. Yes. So just want to publicly acknowledge that their efforts have been invaluable advocates to the community, and we appreciate all their efforts, and the work is not done, right? The work continues. We've got a lot of education efforts planned in the community to kind of educate people about what that certification means and what our new ordinance means in terms of making sure that your lighting is responsible, downcast, shielded, the right amount of intensity, the right color, temperature, as well as some timelines that we're under to retrofit lighting that does not conform to our code. We had 5 years. I think we're down to 3 years, 9 months or something. So the clock is ticking on us. But we'd also wanted to plug a pub talk that we got invited to do, that we're going to be doing at McMenamin's on May 5th. If you want to come down there, Rima and myself are going to be leading the presentation, and then the rest of us are going to be on part of a panel. So the High Desert Museum heard about what we were doing here and have asked that we come and talk to folks down there, and maybe we can get the City of Bend to do this themselves, because the efforts that we do here in Sisters and other places can be negatively affected by what goes on in Bend, or undone by what goes on in Bend.
What time is that going to be?
It starts at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Yep. So, yeah. Huh? They have to register. You have to register. So keep that in mind.
Through High Desert?
Through High Desert, yeah. So, so with that, I guess I would just ask the mayor if she would read the proclamation.
Happy to. All right, whereas International Dark Sky Week is observed in April on the week of the new moon, which is very interesting. And whereas the experience of standing beneath a starry night sky inspires feelings of wonder and awe and encourages stewardship of our shared environment and magnificent dark skies. And whereas dark skies are an integral aspect of sustainability of Oregon's wild ecosystems as a key environmental factor in bird migration, insect pollination, and human sleep patterns. And whereas Oregon's dark skies are a significant natural resource with 7 accredited international dark sky places to date: Sun River, Prineville Reservoir State Park, Oregon Caves National Monument, City of Antelope, Oregon Outback Sanctuary, Cottonwood Canyon State Park, and the City of Sisters. And whereas Eastern Oregon holds the world's largest dark sky sanctuary in an area of the largest pristine night skies in the contiguous 48 states. And whereas astrotourism, including stargazing, astronomy, star parties, and dark sky photography is an evolving facet of outdoor recreation with real economic benefits for communities across Oregon, which promotes the mitigation of light pollution. Now, therefore, as the mayor of the City of Sisters, I, Jennifer Letts, hereby declare April 21st through the 28th, 2025, to be International Dark Sky Week in the City of Sisters. I urge all citizens to celebrate International Dark Sky Week by going out at night and appreciating the ability to still see the stars and sisters, and to committing to responsible outdoor lighting practices. Right? Yay.
And a quick comment for those of you that are dark sky aficionados. On Friday, I think it is the 25th, I believe. If you go up just before dawn, look to the eastern sky, you will see the happy moon face, which is where the moon is the crescent with 2 planets above it that are very bright, and it looks just like, believe it or not, a happy face.
And I wanted to thank you. As former mayor, I kind of, took this dark skies really seriously, and with fellow counselors, we got that thing through about as fast as we could. Thank you, Scott, for all your hard work with the multiple applications, and I know you guys worked on that stuff too. So thank you for doing that. I actually went through old Nugget articles looking for mentions about the dark sky stuff, and I think they went back as far as 2012 that it was first mentioned. So sorry that it took us 10, 11, 12 years, but to be honest, I think it's a great achievement. We're all up here very proud of the work that you guys did on the city's behalf and the community's behalf, and we love it. We like to crow about it across the state, let me tell you. So thank you very much.
And thanks to all the high school students as well, wherever they may be, who were really integral in this process as well. It was really, came from all corners of our community, and that's fantastic.
You may.
Yeah, you may.
I won't-
Yeah.
I can't harp as good as I used to, but I want to. Hello. I want to thank Scott for his leadership in bringing us to this point. He did a great job. And I'm sure the rest of the team is very thankful for that leadership. Okay, I'm done.
All right, well, thank you very much. Next up, we have Kellen Klein with C4C with his Main Avenue building proposal. Step up, yep. And you can turn on the microphone with the big button. And
Check, check. Despite my normally informal demeanor, I've actually prepared some formal remarks tonight. So,
class.
Mayor Letts, members of the council, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Kellen Klein, and I'm the Executive Director of Citizens for Community, or C4C, and I'm pleased to be joined here tonight by our Board President, Adam Kohler. We are here to express our enthusiastic interest in leasing the city-owned building at 291 East Main Avenue, currently known as the Sisters Makers Building, and to share our vision for transforming that space into a true civic hub for Sisters Country. As you know, C4C is a local nonprofit focused on building a more connected community. We do that by promoting civility, collaboration, and civic engagement across Sisters Country. That's included everything from hosting public discussions and community gatherings to supporting nonprofit leaders and strengthening relationships between organizations. Over the past year, our board and community partners have talked a lot about how C4C might take on a deeper role as a, quote, backbone organization, one where we don't just bring people together, but also help coordinate and support the broader civic ecosystem in our region. Side note, by civic in this context, I mean all the things that help make our community work well, not explicitly just city-managed activities or city-led activities. That's why the opportunity to steward this centrally located building is so exciting for us. Our vision is to transform 291 East Main Avenue into a welcoming, inclusive space that brings people together, supports the local nonprofit ecosystem, and cultivates civic life year-round. In many ways, we view this as a continuation of the efforts that Sisters Makers has already nobly started, but expanding that to a broader suite of community members in Sisters Country. We see this building as a shared home base for community organizations, where C4C and one or two other nonprofits could maintain offices, and where a flexible pro-social co-working and meeting area could be available to other community members and groups at low or no cost. We'd also love to host public workshops, town halls, peer learning events, and art showcases, all focused on encouraging community connection and participation. Importantly, this is not just an internally driven ambition for C4C. Our proposal to the city stems largely from the feedback and pain points expressed to us by local organizational leaders, many of whom run lean, volunteer-driven, and chronically under-resourced operations. They're eager to have an affordable, centralized hub for meetings, events, resources, shared learning, and organic opportunities for collaboration. And they see C4C as a natural fit to steward such support for the broader community. This is reinforced by the feedback we have received in a recent survey where dozens of local nonprofits and other organizational leaders expressed their enthusiasm for our vision and affirmed the community demand for the type of space that we envision and that we've presented to you. We've spoken with current building tenants and users like Explore Sisters and the Sisters Farmers Market, and we're committed to maintaining their presence in the building. We've also had preliminary conversations with others like SPRD, SFF Presents, Rotary Club of Sisters, Central Oregon Community College, and more about opportunities to collaborate on new and innovative uses of this space. Financially, we feel that we are ready. We've put together a detailed operating plan, have significant cash reserves, and have identified grant opportunities to help subsidize costs for the space. We also know the building doesn't need much work, just a few minor updates that we've shared with you that we'd be happy to collaborate with the city on, especially those that align with your goals for public safety and fire resilience. This is not intended as a money-making initiative for us, but rather as a mission-aligned community service. We're projecting a sustainable budget, and we're confident in our ability to manage and activate this space responsibly. In closing, we believe that 291 East Main Avenue is perfectly positioned to become a vibrant civic hub, a place where people come to work, learn, connect, and contribute to the life of our community. And we believe that C4C is the right steward to bring this vision to life, thoughtfully, collaboratively, and with community benefit always front of mind. Thank you for your time and your service to Sisters, and I'd be happy to answer any questions along with Adam. We look forward to the discussion. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you, Kellen. Does anyone have any questions?
No, I've read this through. Oh, I'm sorry. And I do have some questions on the proposed facilities changes and modifications, but I suspect that's a discussion that's probably not for right now, and would want to have with staff and some other things to see whether it's feasible in our mind, and also who does what, kind of a thing. So, but I think that you'd be a great tenant. That's where I'm at right now.
Thank you. And yeah, of course, any proposed modifications, that would be a conversation to have with the city. I've already started to discuss some of that with Carrie, just to understand, Carrie Prosser, to understand what that process might look like. We believe, if need be, the building is functional as is right now, but there was some minor tweaks that could even further advance our purposes and help with things like defensible space, for instance.
Yeah. Thank you.
C4C has done such a great job since you took over. I assume the board feels the same way?
The board does feel the same way.
Okay.
We do.
I just
Yes.
wanted to give you an opportunity to speak a little bit, but, you know, it's obviously that your mission's done nothing but grow, you know, since you moved to town and became part of this position, at first as an interim, I think, and then full-time. Really impressive, and you know, I think it's a really, really good fit. I think that just even the way you just presented it is something I want to be a part of, so thanks.
And as a board, this is a natural, we feel like a natural next step as an organization for C4C as we continue to grow and try to support this community the best that we can. And to your point, Michael, since Kellen has been here, this is the reason why we are in this position right now, because of the work he and the rest of the board has done to, you know, grow and engage the community in a different way. And this represents sort of a natural next step for us. And that's why we've been excited to continue to pursue this engagement with you.
Plus, you have great letterhead.
Great letterhead, yes, absolutely.
I appreciate the kind words, and I just also want to acknowledge the immense support that I've received from the board since joining this position. This decision and this proposal to y'all is not, you know, just mine. I'm really fully supported by a very hardworking board. Started with Councilor McDougall when I came on board, and now Adam is president, and the rest of our board. It's just, this has been a group decision that we're advancing here, and we've achieved, you know, across the board, across the pun intended, across the board support for this initiative.
Yeah, be sure to tell your volunteers. I know you got a whole large handfuls of volunteers that also work with you and come every time you call on them, and just let them know we're encouraged by this.
Thank you.
I can't not say anything. Thought I'd let everyone else start there, but I really appreciate you guys taking the time to step in here and step up. I was really sad when I heard the Sisters Makers were going. It's kind of like, oh, what's next? And, you know, I think this is the right time for C4C to take this. We talked about it a couple years ago, and I think it wasn't the right time when Sisters Makers took the building on. You know, we were in the middle of a lot of change when I was part of the organization, and came a long way. And I think that, as you guys said, this is the right time for this.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
I would just add that I think C4C is a huge asset to our community in so many ways. And I really, really appreciate that we have people like you that put together community support like C4C, and it's just wonderful. I did have one question. Can you just elaborate a little bit on this private phone booth?
I was thinking TARDIS-style phone booths myself, so.
Sure. So, have you ever been in a WeWork or another co-working space? Basically, in many co-working spaces, there's a large common area, but those folks need a place to take a private phone call. And so a phone booth, you can almost imagine it like a recording studio. It's, you know, a soundproof box where you can go in and have a phone call without bothering everybody else in the space.
If I might, a closet.
Yeah, a closet, you know, claustrophobic, not welcoming at all. And so when we look at the common area there, our thinking is that would be a great space for collaboration, casual meetings, and co-working during the daytime, but that there might be points when someone would need to take a private phone call. Rather than stepping outside, one of these fairly small phone booths can help do the trick. They can be expensive. Some initial budgeting is, you know, to get one that's actually soundproof can be like $5,000 or more. We've identified some capital grants that we would potentially be eligible for to fund something like this. This is a nice to have, not a necessary to have from day one, but depending on funding, this is something that we might pursue over time. There's no upgrades to the building required for this. It's basically like I'm building some IKEA furniture and putting it in a corner.
Yeah, they're standalone units.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And they would, you're assuming cell phones, so they would not require wiring for a landline.
that's correct. That's correct. I did see that there was a phone booth for sale at Heritage USA Vintage in town, but I don't think that would quite work.
It's been there for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, any other comments or questions? Well, thank you. I think we're just looking for kind of a head nod, I believe, on moving forward with this transition and the new tenant.
Yeah, okay.
Well, on second thought,
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we're all in unison on this one, so thank you very much for your presentation, and you'll be hearing from us soon.
Yeah. The target would be, with the head nods here, then we'll work with Cal and C4C on a lease agreement that would bring back to the council, probably as soon as May 14th.
That sounds great, yeah, and
Perfect.
we welcome that when you're ready, and that'll ultimately be a decision for our board to
Yeah.
finalize that process, but yeah, we're excited to move forward and really appreciate your support. And
Is there a particular month you're going for?
for moving in,
Yeah.
we're prepared to do so, I mean, as soon as June 1st, I believe the makers are vacating their lease as of the end of May, is that correct? So we believe that we could be in a position to take it over as of June 1st. The devil will be in the details with some of that, and we want to do right by our current landlord, Angeline, with the Belfry. But if we can ensure that, the current tenants within the Sisters Makerspace are able to vacate and have their businesses supported, and that we are prepared with our current landlord and everything, then yeah, I think June 1st, we could certainly make it work.
You're not moving too far.
No, exactly. This isn't a moving truck situation. This is,
Dollies.
yeah, or like a brigade, a bucket
Yeah.
brigade across the street there, something like that. So
And when does the,
Those are the worst kind of moves.
it can be just as hard, right?
and when does the farmer's market usually start?
Right then.
Good question. I think it's June.
I think it is, yeah, June 1st.
Yeah.
First weekend.
May 31st, June 1st, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Yeah. So if there was, an interim period, we'd be happy to work with you to help.
Support that process.
Yeah, exactly. We want to ensure that they and Explore Sisters with the visitors vestibule and everyone else has continuity there.
Okay, all right,
Yep.
all right, thank you.
Cool.
Thank you guys very much.
Thanks so much. Take care, y'all.
Next up, we have our quarterly financial report with our finance director, Joe O'Neill.
With pie charts.
Yay,
Oh, boy.
the second most delicious kind of pie.
Too funny.
Now I'm hungry.
All right. Thank you. I will share my screen this time. I'll have to make Rebecca suffer through following me around. Okay. So this is a financial report for the third quarter. So it's through March of 2025. So as you can see here, we're 3 quarters through the fiscal year, or 75%. So that's what that indication is. So like the other quarters, we'll just kind of go through kind of the highlights, and then feel free to ask any questions you have about anything specific as I go along here. So starting with the revenue, beginning fund balance, as I mentioned before, that line has remained the same because that's kind of the starting balance at the beginning of the fiscal year, so that does not change. For property taxes, so for the city, we're, I think, just a few $1,000s off our budgeted collection for the year, so that's great. We probably expect to get maybe $20,000 to $25,000 more through the next 3 months just from remaining property taxes collected that weren't done so in April. And then the URA has far exceeded those property tax budget expectations. The percentages for the urban renewal agency and the city were a little bit different, if you remember, this year. So similar to the second quarter, just moving down here to franchise and park fees, those have exceeded kind of that 3/4 or 75% lapsed percentage, and that is not only because our reservations came online in the third quarter in January, but also because in the street fund our franchise fees have exceeded budget expectations. So they're definitely tracking a little a little higher than than we expected, and we expect that throughout the rest of the year as well. Miscellaneous and other income is down a little bit in terms of lapse percentage. The main reason for that, if you remember, is going to be that urban renewal transfer of $500,000 from the URA debt service fund up to the general fund, and so that'll happen in the fourth quarter. So that's the reason why the main reason why that's a little bit lower. Let's see, moving down to gas tax. Gas tax, as we've seen in the second quarter, is down, I would say, as it typically is this time of year, 4 to 5%. So we'll just kind of track that as the rest of the year kind of rolls forward. But yeah, definitely a little bit of decline in terms of our budget expectations, but not a whole lot. And then SDC income, similar to the first and second quarter presentations, has exceeded budget expectations. It's mostly due to, as it's stated in the notes, due to the current development in the Woodlands and Sunset Meadows. So that's kind of driving up those numbers. And then water receipts. So that was another thing we were closely monitoring with the the recent increases to account for the water funds portion of the improvement projects coming up. And so they are tracking a little bit above actually what we thought, and that's mostly due to the variable. If you remember, we had a little bit of an adjustment or an increase in the variable rate. So that's kind of buoyed up that percentage a little bit. So that's water receipts. Sewer receipts, again, as they usually do, are remaining steady. So they're just they're tracking about with our expectations. And then lodging tax is tracking a little bit higher than what we expected. You know, typically you see some kind of dip, you know, in the third quarter, but believe it or not, it was fairly strong in the January, February months compared to last year. So we're encouraged by that, and we kind of project a little bit greater than our budget expectations, at least for the end of the year. So great indication there. And then shared revenue and grants is a little bit low as a lapse percentage, and that's largely due to the East Portal project and some of the grant receipts coming in the fourth quarter as well. Remember, that's an $880,000 grant. We got about half of that already. We'll get the other half here in the fourth quarter.
I'm sorry, did you say Sisters Gateway Park? Is that what?
Not yet. Nope.
No,
No.
That's East Portal still.
never heard of it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, so that is a snapshot of the revenue. Unless you have any questions, I'll move on to the expense side of things.
I have a question, not about financials, but is there a reason you put the franchise and park fees together?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, when I was reviewing that for the presentation, I thought about splitting it up because they have gotten so big. The main driver for it is the workbook that this feeds from has some keywords, right, that feed into that main summary. And those keywords are franchise fees and park fees, and that's just how we did that in the genesis of this presentation. So I thought about splitting that up, and I think I will. We did that same thing with police services, if you remember, just because it's a big amount. And, you know, franchise fees are so significant in the street fund especially, and then park fees are too, to that extent, that it's probably worth separating those out. So I'll take that in a note and I'll incorporate it in the next one.
I'd like to see that as well.
Okay, yeah, of course.
He loves adding
Yeah,
pros to
right.
his.
I just can't forget it next time when I run the third quarter again.
I didn't know if it was a space thing, you know.
No, it's all keyed off of a program and some keywords there.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah. Okay, so now going down to expenses. And you'll notice the capital outlay expenditure here, the first one is very low. And similar to the second quarter presentation, a lot of the larger projects that we had budgeted for just either have not commenced or are being heavily worked on in the fourth quarter. So a good example is at Barkley, and then East Portal as well. So, but a lot of the other projects I noted here, well, West Side Pump Station, there are numerous projects, just haven't commenced yet, and that might be pushed over until next year, and you'll see that through the budget process as well. Debt service, so a couple things there. The first one is you'll notice that, again, the URA transfer, that's got to do with debt service, so that will take place in the fourth quarter. That's why that's a little bit low. And then we'll also have our regular bond debt payment in late May. So that'll be another effect to the debt service line item. So Those are just two things that are missing from that. Materials and services and personnel are both tracking, well below budget expectations, so no concerns or any red flags there. So we're in good shape. As I noted in the last quarterly, there's a couple of the enterprise funds were in materials and services. We just have had some unexpected repairs. We'll kind of monitor those, as the year goes on and potentially come back to you with the supplemental budget. And then, interfund transfers, those are basically the contribution of funds to the City Hall Debt Service Fund, which I think we've touched on before, and then grants and pass-throughs as well. So that grants and pass-through, if you remember that number, that is a workforce housing contribution, the affordable housing contribution. And we're just that's more of a timing issue as well, but that was earmarked for 24-25. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions for me on the expense side.
Numbers look good, you know me, I always look at the percentages. And,
Yeah.
I like what I see.
You don't have any concerns, do you?
I don't have any concerns, no. I'm gonna be thinking about with the word change here for the rest of the meeting. Maybe I'll change that up.
Cause extra stress.
Yeah.
Good job.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
And if you like that, May 13th, we got plenty more to
Time's
come.
coming.
Budget meeting.
Line by line by line.
When will
Yeah.
we see the budget book? Not to put pressure on, just curious.
The 7th, I think we have it slated
Okay. Yep, thank you.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Well, I would second that.
Okay.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Hey.
Aye.
Aye. All right, now we're on to council business. So we'll be continuing our deliberations on defensible space. And Matt Martin, Principal Planner, will walk us through this process.
Quotes.
More
we can use
paper?
in our diary.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good.
All right, so Matt's going to do an introduction, and then I can read the needed parts of the script. Is that the order we're going in?
Matthew Martin, Principal Planner, City of Sisters. I encourage you to speak through the first two items and then throw it to me and I'll take it from there.
All right, so this is the time set for deliberations on City File Number TA 25-01, an application for text amendments to the Sisters Development Code to implement defensible space standards for new development in the City of Sisters, submitted by the City of Sisters. The background is on April 9th, 2025, City Council conducted a public hearing to receive testimony regarding the proposed text amendments. At the conclusion of the testimony, the City Council closed the public hearing and initiated deliberations. The City Council then continued deliberations to tonight's meeting. Keep going?
Yep, next item, just to set the stage, yeah,
All
thank
right,
you.
thank you. Deliberations, our options are to, 1, approve the amendments as proposed, 2, approve the amendments with changes, or 3, deny the amendments. Staff will guide the council in the deliberations to address changes presented by the council for consideration. I'll now turn it over to staff to guide the deliberations.
Be deliberate.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, councilors, and all those in attendance here in the room and those online. As noted, we're continuing deliberations tonight on a package of text amendments to the Sisters Development Code related to defensible space for new development within the city limits of Sisters. Just to reiterate the summary and how we got here, City Council held a public hearing on April 9th, closed that public hearing, commenced deliberations, and continued those deliberations to this evening.
One of the purposes was during the deliberations on the 9th, a few changes were identified for consideration to be included within the package of amendments, and others began to emerge. And so in the spirit of time and opportunity to fully compilate and consider those suggested amendments, we continued deliberations to tonight, and councilors were encouraged to submit additional changes for consideration, and so those were received and incorporated into your meeting packet tonight. As noted, opportunities for decision are approve as drafted, approve with amendments, or deny as drafted. And then for our, we're doing things a bit differently through this process. That's why we had a specialized script, and given the extent of the potential changes being considered, with the deliberations, there's opportunity to either, if the changes are limited, council can consider closing deliberations and moving towards an approval or a decision on the amendments if those changes can be specified with distinct language that we can then translate into the ordinance language. However, if the scope of the changes are more conceptual or more extensive, then staff encourages or you consider to continue deliberations to a future date, and that way we can incorporate those specified changes that were identified by the council tonight into the actual amendments so that you can consider the full scope of the language being considered. So that'll be, those steps in the process will be contingent on the recommendations by the council tonight. So my goal is to walk our way through the table that was presented in the staff report for tonight. Several changes were submitted for consideration or raised at deliberations previously. Many of them are limited in their scope, and others that are more substantive. So there's opportunity to work our way through here, and some that may require limited consideration or dialogue, others that may take more time to consider. The goal here is to achieve consensus on what changes to the package of amendments the council desires. That does not mean a unanimous decision, but rather looking for if it's a majority or at least acceptance that the change be included for consideration. And so we'll take it from there. Any questions about process?
No, just a couple of things that I discovered today when I had a discussion with Matt. First of all, when you read over the table, you'll see the word alliterative. It should be alternative. It kind of threw me for a loop because it's a medical term, and I was trying to think what we were doing here, maybe less bleeding up at the mouth or gums, trying to get this thing done. But so when you see that word, that's what you're referring to as alternative quote below. And then the second thing that confused me, but we clarified, is that the attachment A is the code as it was presented to us. It does not reflect the changes in the table because we haven't decided if we wish those changes to occur. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay, that's helpful for me to be reminded as we go through the process.
Yeah, simply a typo in the table, so I apologize for that, instead of alternative. And acknowledging that, in particular, Exhibit B does not include the diagrams that were included with the ordinance exhibits. That's just a matter of formatting, and once we come back with the ordinance itself, it'll include any diagrams that were presented before or agreed upon to include with any changes tonight. Okay, working through Chapter 1.3, the definitions. At the previous deliberation, so let me pause. I'll offer the recommended change and some brief description of what the intent of it is, but I do encourage the councilors that did raise these issues to provide some additional context if necessary, so that I can only go as far as capturing a summary of what was behind the recommendation and look to you for additional context. The first being to the definition of fire-resistant plants. This would be removing the first sentence that states plants that are not listed on the prohibited flammable plant list.
the idea is that there are other plants that are fire resistant, but don't have the same properties as those that are included on or not included on the prohibited plant list. So it gives a inference that all plants that aren't listed are fire resistant. So it provides just less of a specificity from this definition.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
I'm fine with it too.
I submitted that.
And I'm okay with it as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Moving to a new section, but necessary for the recommended change, and that's in Chapter 2.15, Special Provisions, in particular, point 400 accessory structures. There's a recommendation of a change to add accessory structures shall be spaced a minimum of 20 feet from any other structure. This would just provide additional spacing between structures and implies that there'd be additional fire protections from that structural spacing. I don't have any other context other than that additional spacing provides its additional protection from structure to structure.
I have a comment on that. To get the density that we're looking for housing, this presents a huge problem. Accessory structures, if we want to have more of them and encourage them in the future, adding a 20-foot space between the structures creates a big issue with the lot sizes that we're encouraging these days, and which are smaller than some of the existing ones we have in town already. And it does help that I'm in the business a little bit, but at the same time, I think that this is so limiting that I think I would throw the whole thing out if this was in it. I think it's that limiting and a little counterproductive. And I'll say it for this reason. There are other parts of this spacing that we're doing where trees are grouped together if they're close together. And I think we can do the same thing with buildings and use, not have, be within 10 feet. If all the buildings are hardened as we're expecting them to be, and we're talking about new construction here, I think you can kind of group buildings together in the same way. Obviously, that is not as safe as not grouping them together, but with the lot sizes and stuff that we have, it's severely limiting on new construction with the kind of housing options that we're always trying to keep in mind, which is not all houses are going to have accessory structures. Not all of them are going to have ADUs that you can actually live in, but the ones that do, I have a 1/4 acre lot on the south side of town, which is a pie-shaped. I wouldn't be able to have a shed anywhere except on the very front of my property, which is kind of not the place you want a tool shed, so to speak. So I think that, I think we have to be careful when you define a spacing amount in this context. I don't think it works very well. And so,
Yeah,
to keep it brief, that's
agree with that.
that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
So I submitted this, and, this is just based on, the science that most, researchers in this area want, 20 feet of spacing between structures. And I'm looking for, to the experts back there, if there's a head nod, or am I making that up? But that's kind of everything that I've been reading, is that is preferential. So that's why it's in there. I totally understand that there's very much, at least right now, a lot of clashing in between high density to try to achieve affordable housing and trying to mitigate for, loss of structures and multiple structures and one catching another one on fire because they're too close. So, that's why I kind of have high hopes for, there's a bill right now to help with, getting condos back in the mix here in Oregon, which would really help that when we're having lots of units sharing one structure instead of being cut up into pieces. I'll just say that, again, it's new development, right? And I think the one workaround here for any new development is that, if you were a developer or a builder and that was,
Quick finish. I
Okay.
have a comment after you're done.
you know, if this was a known, and you knew you were working with kind of a small space, you know, one would hope, and again, there's a lot of, you know, it's the cart before horse situation here. One would hope that that would be kind of taken into context, and maybe the structure would be built bigger or accommodate more storage, things like that, is certainly one creative way to get around it.
Or connect them,
But-
right? I mean, that's kind of the easiest
Well, yeah, I
part.
mean, you know, remember the old days when, you know, you'd have people sharing a garage, you know, but it was just right down the property line, and, you know, that gets into another world, but, yeah, so I mean, I totally understand that this is very much a large challenge, but it's also the, you know, it keep going around the circle. If we're building affordable houses, but we're packing them in so tight that they have an increased fire threat, then we're taking people who already are kind of at a disadvantage financially and putting them at a higher risk for losing their house. You know, so it's trying to balance all that.
A couple thoughts on this. Given that we have 5-foot lot line setbacks, houses, a neighboring house could be 10 feet away. I heard the 10-foot number come up. And I looked to our fire professionals, is 10 feet better than nothing, or is 10 feet too close? Do you have a sense on that? I mean, looking for some guidance. Any thoughts?
10 feet is better than nothing.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead.
There is a risk of that exposure that close.
Yeah. That 5-foot setbacks have always worried me, but that's kind of what we're talking about. We talk density. I'm kind of like the idea you do connect them, but maybe the language should say when possible, 20 foot, no closer than 10. Is that a compromise that works?
I have something I want to read. That's okay?
Yeah, but I just wanted to finish that, see.
Yeah, no, I
that
know,
thought
but this
goes-
is about,
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
So, wasn't really sure how to address this, but there are a lot of changes in here from 2 weeks ago that I got into reviewing. And this is the first of the ones that I was uncomfortable with, and so I just wanted to put something together so I wouldn't lose track of myself. But I'm uncomfortable with many of the proposed changes, and while I'm in favor of moving toward a defensible space code that better protects our community, I feel that many of these suggestions go too far for a first rendering of our code. Code is rarely perfect out of the gate, and I felt like the extent to which we discussed new defensible space requirements in January was a good place to start. If we were to decide to take the new requirements this far, I would not feel comfortable without taking these new suggestions back through our code change process, starting with the Planning Commission, as I feel there should be room for public input, and that public input is now closed. Okay, I just.
Okay.
need to say that.
So back to this topic, and I hear what you're saying, I've had similar thoughts, but back to this topic. I was uncomfortable with the 20 feet, but I could see the rationale behind it. I was not prepared to say no, but I think that the mayor has a good point with 20 feet. I also think that others have a good point with most of these lots are not going to probably accommodate any kind of an accessory if that's the requirement. And so, you know, it would have to be attached, as you said, as you designed my attached piece of property. And my house is 10 feet off. So, I mean, I don't know how we fix this. Either you don't put it in or you say no more than 10 feet. That's all I can think of. The concern I have a little bit is that these buildings that are sheds, et cetera, oftentimes contain significant flammable material. That's where you store your chemicals, where you store your fuel, where you store your lawnmower, chainsaw, dirt bike, you know, and so that's the reason why the 20, even though I don't like it, probably makes me more comfortable. But I hear what you're saying, and I think we have to take into account that as we look at density and we look at lot lines, and we look at smaller houses, how do we accommodate that within the code without making everybody go out of compliance with the code and not tell anybody and stick up in the backyard and wait for someone to complain?
Well, yeah, and to be honest with you, I have a hard time telling a private landowner that they can't have stuff within 20 feet when the main house is 10 feet from a neighbor, right? I mean, that just kind of seems a little, that's a tough line for me to be able to tell somebody.
I was thinking too about our situation with our assisted living services that we've lost. And I think more and more adult children are going to have their parents, aging parents, live with them or on their property. And we might want to consider that we have that flexibility there for them to build an ADU for their aging parent to be nearby. I kind of caught what you said, Michael, about the hardening. If the building, if it's, and this is just not just ADUs, but if it had some fire-resistant hardening and was certified, or I don't know how that all works. I don't even know if tool sheds are that way or not, but I would feel a little more okay with maybe a 10-foot, but I definitely think 20 is too restrictive.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's a challenge, and remember, not every lot in development code is going to be, these tiny lots, right? I mean, there's going to be a variety of different sizes, so, there will be lots in the future that will be, a variety of sizes, and this would be applicable. I mean, I think, farther down in here, one of the suggestions I'd also submitted was just kind of reiterating that the 0 to 5 foot zone applies to accessory dwellings or structures as well, sheds, dwellings, whatever, which I think is really, the number one most, I would say, critical issue is to kind of maintain that, so it's not, what I'm trying to get at is, I mean, I definitely see the difficulty with the 20 feet. I don't have a perfect answer for that. I just have some guesses of what we might be able to do in the future, but, I mean, my number one concern is that structures have that, that 0 to 5 foot, zone. And so, if that's the concession that has to be made, I think I can live with that. But it would be possibly nice to at least have it in here as, a suggestion, maybe, or we'll attempt to, I mean, is that something you feel is proper to have in code?
When we're having numeric standards, it's either more or less, so it's 10 feet minimum or maximum. And so if it's 10 feet, it's 10 feet, and that's what we'd be looking for compliance with.
Is there a definition of accessory structure in the code?
Yes.
I don't have it. I have a PowerPoint up. Yeah, so
it encompasses everything like greenhouses.
It does.
Sheds, yeah. Prefabricated or not, right?
Now, the challenge, so if we're sticking with this, the challenge is if you have a shed that you go and buy at a retailer that are less than 200 square feet, they don't require a building permit. There's no oversight by the city unless it's gone through code enforcement.
Right.
So it's when it's those that trigger the building permit, we have an opportunity to review compliance with all of these standards. So now the definition doesn't necessarily include that size limit, but we know that that's a threshold requiring a building permit, and therefore give us that opportunity to review.
And that's where your gas cans go, so. I certainly wouldn't want to be more restrictive than 10 feet. I mean, 10 feet's I can concede that, I guess, but,
If you think about the.
or connected.
If you think about the 5-foot exclusion zone around the property, the 5-foot exclusion zone that you were suggesting around the ancillary use, that's 10 feet. Right? Because if you put the building inside of the 5 foot of the other, it's
10 feet.
Depending on how you write it.
Yeah, well,
They couldn't, zones can overlap.
if we want to leave this language in, 10 would work with me. If we don't want to leave this language in, I'm okay with that. I think that's where I'm at right now. And I hear what you're saying, Councilman McDougal, I really do. I hear what you're saying, and I think that we've had other code issues in the past where I've been the dissenter. I voted no and everybody else voted yes. I think that's certainly a right. And I think that you need to keep reminding us of that as we go through this process. I think that's important and,
Sure.
and I have no problems with it.
And the last,
And-
oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I had some of the same concerns, and I was feeling like, I think we need to get through this process and maybe see where we land on a lot of these things, and then kind of defer to expertise on, all right, is this really something that should go back through the process? Have we made so many changes that it really needs to have another set of eyes on it? That
Yeah,
was kind of how I was looking at it, but,
Yeah, it just felt like, for me, that this was, in Sarah's brain for, 3 months, I'd had this one set of thoughts that we were coming to, and then 3 days ago, it was all this. And so some of the changes, I feel like I would need to, read a lot more code for me to be comfortable with. But I absolutely am, if everyone else is comfortable, I am very much okay just stating my position. But I just felt like as I was reading through it, I had so many of those thoughts that I would just put it into one thought so I didn't, keep repeating myself. So, yeah.
It's kind of
I'm
like
fine
making
to-
sausage, but we're changing the recipe and who knows what we're going to get.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine to keep going. I just,
And the other reminder I'd
easier for
just
me
like
to-
to say is, and sorry, I didn't mean to jump on you,
please.
over you, but we're never going to make the perfect code, so let's try and keep that in mind, that we're going to all probably give and take during this process, I think. So, okay.
So through that discussion, so what we had, the original was 20 feet, perhaps a compromise or other alternative is 10 feet of separation between structures.
I'd rather have it gone, but it's my first choice, but if I'm the only one, I can compromise at 10 feet.
and how do our fire professionals feel? Is 10 feet better than nothing, or?
They already
is
said
it-
that.
Yeah.
I asked them.
Yeah.
What was this attachment you were describing? Is this like a breezeway?
Yeah,
A
I mean,
breezeway?
I had an addition put on my house. Actually, somebody down there did the drawings for it. I won't say who. And we had a breezeway, like what I call an L breezeway. I grew up in Maine. That's what you do. You connected the barn to the house with a breezeway. 'Cause
Okay.
The barn was where the outhouse was, but that's beside the point. So that's what we did. We designed that.
And if a type of structure like that's built new, that means the building envelope itself is
Yes,
all together as one unit.
right. And so it has to be built to the standards, sheet rock and those kinds of fun things.
I said my piece, you guys got to figure it out.
Yeah, so Councilor Predin is either do not include or potentially 10. If I could pull the councilors, Councilor McDougal,
I would say not include.
10
Mayor,
feet.
10 feet. Councilor Ross,
7.93 to 10, or not. I'm kind of the same place.
Councilor
Do not include.
Heller. So we have four supportive of not include, 3 potentially supportive of 10.
I'm a not include first, so. Okay.
Remember, yeah, I mean, I just going back to everything that, I suggested, and I know other people, different suggestions, everything in
Yep.
here came out of science. I did not make this up.
Yeah,
Yeah, oh, no,
yeah,
we know
totally
that.
understand that.
We're not
no,
thinking
no,
that.
No,
All right.
no, nobody, I would
So what
never
I-
do that.
Sorry.
And this is all in the guise of trying to save property and lives, so, and I know there's not a perfect answer, but I feel like we need to make an effort, so.
So, consensus I heard was to not include this provision in them. And acknowledging that, with any of these standards, throughout this process, this is a matter of compromise from providing safety for structures and property, protecting the natural environment and the habitat and other ecological factors, providing and facilitating development within a community. So all of these are competing interests. So I think the farther you can go, sure, that's more, provides more protective measures, but how do we, compromise and fit into the middle and providing the different goals that the community has for development, natural features, et cetera.
Did you mention, Mayor, that somewhere in here, and I think I saw it, that there's discusses that ancillary dwellings should have the 5-foot requirement
Which creates 10-foot buffer, like you
of
said.
of the other, in other words, I think that's in here somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll acknowledge that's already, the defensible space standards are already applicable to accessory structures
Okay,
as
so they're-
described
it's already
in the
applicable
introduction, yeah.
So it's, like I said, it kind of makes the 10-foot,
Well, it doesn't specifically
understand.
do that. I mean, you could
Yeah.
have them,
right, but we also have to understand that once this house is built and the person moves in, like you said, they can go to Costco or they can go down to any place and buy a plastic building and stick it on the side of the house. And we don't like that, we don't want that, and we're hoping that the 5-foot code comes into play with that and makes them move it out. But typically, the code doesn't really come into play with an ancillary dwelling until it's 200 square feet or more.
I think, just noting, we're providing the regulatory framework. There's other recommendations and educational opportunities that we can, partner with our other agencies or nonprofits that provide the educational opportunities that say, hey, here's our minimum. But knowing that if you go farther, you provide additional protective measures or what have you. So I think that's another opportunity here too.
and yeah, at what point does that become municipal code versus development code?
Well, I know, that's what I'm
Yeah.
wondering too,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Moving to Chapter 2.16 Airport District. This is inclusion of a reference to the defensible space standards. We've gone through the package of amendments to apply this same reference to the various base zone chapters. This was just an oversight with the original package. This would be just an similar inclusion of a reference.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I would just clarify that there already is a G. This would probably be H.
Duly noted. Yeah, we'll format the code appropriately. Yeah.
Just one of the alliterative things.
Alternative.
There it is.
I'm fine with that change.
Yep. That is how you pronounce it.
Okay, moving to the new chapter 3.7 Defensible Space Standards. In the applicability section under .300A, the addition of the defensible space area shall extend 30 feet from the furthest extent of the new building deck additions to an existing building or detached accessory building or the property line, whichever is less. This was introduced by staff at the public hearing to provide that explicit reference to where the defensible space would apply on the property, that being the 30 feet.
I kind of need to have that discussed with the following one as well, because there's kind of a relationship there. I submitted the second one. If you don't mind, Matthew, if I just talk a little bit on that.
Yeah, so the second mean, just to introduce it, would be to remove the applicability of the defensible space to the addition area, meaning that it would, it just wouldn't apply if you're constructing an addition. It would, instead of being only applicable to a portion of the structure, it just would not be applicable to the addition. So, Councilor Pellerin.
So I was really challenged with what I'd call brand-new development versus adding to existing development. Because that's when I was kind of like, well, if it's this, if it's that. And it really kind of rippled through all of the decisions I was going to make for the remainder of these changes. I really needed an answer to this question here, is do we want to say, if we add a deck and or a room addition, are we going to be concerned? Because when I had asked Matthew last meeting, we were saying, well, the defensible space standards would just apply to that deck, would just apply to that room addition. And that didn't sound right to me. You know, with the rest of the house, it wouldn't apply, or it just didn't sound right. But it also didn't sound right to say, if you add a deck, then you've got to clear your whole property to meet our defensible standards, base standards. So I wanted to kind of just take it out, the deck and room additions, just to make this simpler for me, being selfish, to make the decisions on the remainder of these items. And this, I don't know if it puts it into municipal code or not, or it's just another section in the future for decks and room additions, because we already know we have kind of this challenge of how are we going to get existing property owners who may be financially strained to make these changes if they just wanted to add a room. This is a tough one for me. I was really stuck at this.
And you're talking about the second part for the most.
Yeah, so let's.
The second part of this, which kind of, because I still saw the part and the first one.
Yeah, because of the first item included the reference to the deck and additions, I think it is appropriate to move to the second item to discuss, should the defensible space standards be applicable to additions or decks in excess of 200 square feet?
Well, two things. First of all, my understanding is that what we're working on right now is code that will be applied when a building permit comes in or a development is platted by you folks.
Correct.
So if I add a deck to the back of my existing home, that's not in this part of it's somewhere else, correct?
If it's not triggering the development review, building permitting, et cetera, it wouldn't be captured.
So the requirement of building decks or whatever, connected to ancillary buildings, whatever, that's going to happen during the initial construction process. And the standard would apply, the 30 feet or whatever, if we adopt it. And so I'm not sure where the addition of an existing building or detached accessory building property line, whichever is less, because we're not talking about an existing building, we're talking about new building. I mean, it's a fine line for me too. I bopped around on this in the back of my head too. Did we cross from new development code into my backyard, your backyard, your backyard, your front yard, your side yard? And so where are we on this? I mean, if I build a house, brand new home, and I put a deck on the back, that's subject to the whole thing, because it's part of that original construction. And that's the 30-foot setback or whatever is possible. Homeowner buys the house, comes in 6 months later and puts in a deck, that's a different set of code, right?
No, if it exceeds the 200 square feet, then it's going to, or that addition, that's going to trigger the development code.
But it would already have been triggered when the house was built.
So if the house was built 50 years ago and an addition was constructed now, then that addition is new development.
Yeah. I see.
I see the applicability of it, because if somebody, added on, I mean, somebody built up second story or something like this probably wouldn't impact them, However, if somebody's building out and they add a room or a wing or something, they could be encroaching on other trees and plants and other things that now, the fire threat has come to them, or they've gone to the fire threat. So it's kind of a reminder to your house has gotten wider, so therefore, your defensible space needs to be wider. I agree, it's a little clunky. One would hope that in an existing structure, they already have some degree of defensible space, and, we're doing a chicken egg thing here, we're doing development code first, and, municipal code will come later, building code, but,
I'm with Counselor Pellerin. It's so clunky, it kind of doesn't make sense to me. Because you might have this great new addition and stuff, but your house may be 50 years old and it's, might still have shingles on it. And it doesn't seem like the defensible space just around the new part's not gonna do a whole lot. And I think that it misses what we've been trying to tackle, which is new construction and generally encouraging that new housing is what we're kind of going for here. At least that's what I thought.
well, but it's just we're triggering any sort of construction over 200 feet is going to trigger the development code. So we're just trying to
And you're right.
align with that.
Yeah.
So I guess I could see where, I'm trying to envision this. And so if somebody built a deck out and had not done any clearing on their property,
They would now have to.
they would now have to do 30 feet worth of defensible space work in that direction. I just want to, I'm saying that out loud. That's,
Yeah, the
That's-
5-foot part and the
And the
5 to 30.
30.
Both, yeah.
Okay.
And that's just for a 10 by 20 deck. That's 200 square feet. And then if you're connecting the deck to the house, then you'd have to follow that standard. The first 5 feet of it couldn't be wood, correct? Because it kicks in all these other.
The deck is considered part of the structure in this
Right.
instance. If it's
You might have a
attached.
metal rail connected to a house that's made of cardboard.
So a new deck would trigger the 5 foot no matter what.
What's being contemplated is whether it would apply to decks or additions. So I think that's first and foremost. So if it is
Where do
applicable,
most
then the
houses
5
get
and,
Fire in a firestorm is typically underneath the deck or down through the slots of that nice, beautiful wooden deck that I have in my backyard that I can't keep all the pine needles out of. Nice dry cedar.
well, we could also assume that it's a 200 square foot room. I mean, it's the same, where the code is addressing both.
Right.
yes.
Right. Okay.
See, I wouldn't want to exclude decks or additions to an existing structure from the 5-foot requirement, which we're asking all of our homeowners to do, whether they are in a new development or not. That's something we're going to be putting out to the community as we do defensible space work. And, I'm already looking at how am I going to do this and make my neighbor unhappy. And, so I think that's there. Does it trigger the entire house? That's a question I don't know the answer to. The 50-year-old house with a brand-new deck, example.
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
don't,
But
I
the
don't think
30-foot
we've
piece.
decided that we're doing 5 feet in the municipal code at some point. I think that's a future discussion.
Yes, I know,
Yeah.
but I'm working from the assumption that should that occur, that, does it make sense to only apply it? If it doesn't occur, does it make sense to only apply it to that deck? Now, I would argue it probably does, because that helps to keep the fire from getting underneath the deck and spreading up into the house. But that's just me, having seen how some of this stuff works. Gonna make the quail unhappy when I put real fine wire fencing underneath my deck so the needles and stuff can't blow in. That's what they like to hide.
What Councilor Ross, you're touching on the building hardening component.
Yeah, building hardening component, yeah. So,
And that's not,
I think that the 30-foot piece is hard for me as well. When I look at some of our existing properties, I think that in the new areas, when you go out and you look at where we think we might have a UGB expansion, should that occur, there are no trees. There's a lot of flammable material, grass, but there really aren't a lot of trees.
Well,
Where,
We also don't know what our UGB is.
oh, I know, but I'm saying, but I understand that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying if you presume where a UGB expansion might be, we know we've eliminated good parts of the town just because of logistics.
Mhm.
That's all I'm saying. And so,
Would you be more comfortable if it was just 5 feet?
yeah, I would.
You know, the 0 to 5.
Want to make sure I understand.
I think
What's
the
being
challenge here,
contemplated?
though, is, you know, again, we're doing, as we talked about earlier, doing code that's going to eventually have to match up with other code. And
Yeah.
so,
That's where it gets ugly.
right, because I think maybe we're, you know, to our credit, we're trying to consider that and, but if we tackle, you know, the municipal code later on these issues, I mean, would it be relatively easy for you to go back, or for us to go back and, if we found there was something that wasn't quite matching like this, because it is this gray area between existing homes and new construction, that we'd be able to match stuff up pretty easily?
We certainly can attempt to align each component. Yeah, so the standards could be consistent from code to code. I think I think we're off track with each of the items that are being discussed. I almost
I
feel
think
like
the
we're
problem-
rewriting the code.
My mind worked well until I realized that this would apply to something over 200 square feet. I was thinking new development, new construction, new roads, and new platted lots. That's what was going through Gary's head. And I like this for that. But now when I start thinking about existing lots, existing areas of our community, the type of vegetation we have within the community, the mature trees, and those sorts of things, it's a much harder process for me to work through in my head. The 5-foot thing, yeah, I mean, I can see that, but 30 feet, I mean, I take my yard, if I had to go back 30 feet, I'd be down into the floodplain. And that area has never been touched by anybody except the gods of water.
Right, it's not just about your house, though.
Well, I know, yeah, but I'm just trying to think of how that would impact someone
And this is, you know, the other thing, I
with a
mean,
large existing.
I've always leaned towards making this code as stringent as possible, knowing that we have a whole chapters and chapters of code that are not followed to a T in this town. And, you know, you can't throw in a stick without hitting some sort of code violation, and we don't go out and arrest people for those or anything, you know, so you know, I kind of look at the code for the most part as something to work towards. Nothing that's going to be ultimately, you know, punitive or anything like that. I mean, we know that a lot of this stuff is a challenge to work with, but I'm still kind of wanting to aim as high as possible.
The code as written was already the most stringent fire code in in the state. Before you added all these things, so
But it wasn't good enough.
it was, it was the most stringent in the state.
It doesn't matter. What's the bar? If the bar is low, then I you know.
If the bar is getting something on there without trying to make a perfect code.
And again, I know that it's not going to be perfect.
I particularly will not vote for code that we would not enforce. I realize
Well-
we can't, I realize we can't enforce all, I'm losing my mind here. Can't think of the word, but all infractions. But if we don't expect to enforce it, I would not personally vote for code change.
Right, and that's, I mean, it was a little bit of hyperbole, right, but, you know.
Well, does the word when feasible? I mean, you have places in the code where you have waffle words, and that's what I call them, even though they're not. And so when feasible, the defensible space shall extend X feet. To further extent from the new building deck addition to existing building structure, whatever to the property line, whichever is less. But I am a little concerned, like I said. I haven't got a problem with new construction, but I have a problem with remodel construction kicks this in for the entire lot on an older home.
So I want to acknowledge, well, brings us back to the table. I want to acknowledge that the subjective language that you noted where feasible to the greatest extent
Yes.
can be challenging in particular when you're applying needed housing.
Yes.
You need to have objective standards, and we could be challenged on that on any application.
That's what I thought.
I do also want to note that built into the exceptions and potentially variances, there are opportunities. If you have a ecologically sensitive area, that you have vegetation in a floodplain in a river corridor, frankly, of course, we're not going to require all vegetation to be removed from the bed and banks of the river to comply with our defensible space standards, but there's exceptions for those scenarios. This would apply to a vacant lot in the older part of town. That's how it's been discussed and structured from the beginning. The 30 feet has been included in the consideration from the beginning. So, say that again?
It has been in there from the beginning,
Correct.
so this is not new language. I
No.
mean, new as in last meeting.
The reference to the 30 feet was just explicitly in the applicability section, emphasized that the defensible space area extends to 30 feet out from the structure, which is
And that was in
within the
the-
code.
in
It
the-
just wasn't in the applicability in the introductory statement.
Okay. But it was further in the other.
Correct,
that we
in the
received back
details.
in October, November.
Correct. So I think bringing it back to the question of if, I'm looking for maybe a roll call, whether or not the defensible space standards would be applicable to an addition or including deck or living space in excess of 200 square feet. Would we apply that surrounding that new addition? We have some support for not including those additions to be applicable. That would look towards new construction, new structures that are coming in. So it's,
Boy. This isn't any fun.
No.
I just don't want it to be that somebody can add a wing to their house, and then, even though, it triggers a permit, it's development code.
Right.
But then, it's up against, 17 sagebrushes and a bunch of trees.
yeah, so you're supportive of applying it to the additions? Understood. Councilor Ross?
Oh, no, I'm just lost in thought. I mean, the save the town, I watched the other ones burn side of me says do it. How applicable is this going to be for the average homeowner in parts of town that already exist to do, if they want to add a $4,000 deck and now it's a $30,000 project, is of concern to me.
And also,
I don't know how we fix it. It's just, that's where I'm at.
I mean, usually if people are adding, they're kind of adding, the person's lot's going to end, and, the other thing about this, trying to be as stringent as possible is because, this is only as wide and deep as your lot. It would be great to tell your neighbor that don't build your house so close to me, but we can't do that, right? So in a lot of these situations, there isn't going to be 30 feet away, from the addition or to begin with, so. So I know, like 90% of this time, this is going to be brand-new master plan development, but yeah, there's that 10% that is sticky, so.
Question, replacing a deck, same square footage, do you have to pull a building permit for that? Does that require a review if it's not adding to the space of the house? So you have
the
the
same
deck, it's 300 square feet, and it's time to rebuild that sucker.
I'd consider that maintenance if you're just replacing the existing components
But you'd have to
within
pull a
the same
permit for it.
footprint. I don't know what the threshold for a building
Okay,
permit
I
is
just was curious, sorry.
for decking
That's
material.
helpful too.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but like one of the reasons this provision is probably in the draft code as written is in recognition that there isn't anything in the municipal code, right? So to capture the existing properties within the city is basically, a plan that over time you may get more fire resiliency by, basically requiring properties to upgrade to a defensible space when they do major improvements. Because if you don't ever proceed with a defensible space for the municipal code, you're not going to get that unless you get tear downs and rebuilds on lots as opposed to additions, which are probably more common than complete tear downs and rebuilds.
Is there?
Same thing with the roofing.
Is there a compromise in here somewhere between the size of what's being added on?
That could be, and I think that that's something that could be thought of. 200 square feet of just a deck, I mean, it doesn't seem like a whole lot.
Or a 10 by 20 shed?
Yeah.
Or 10 by 20. So I'm wondering if there's some trigger point on an existing property when there is some significant development, and what that trigger point is, to start getting that into the retroactive code of existing properties. And I'm trying to figure out how we can get some distance more than 5. That's what's going through my brain right now. Because I am totally in agreement with the 30-foot thing on any new construction that's occurring. I think we need to think about that's how we start to get compliance throughout the city and in the new areas. And if certain parts of this community should become available for UGB expansion, we would need to have that consideration taken into effect quite clearly for some of those. So how do we protect the homeowner who wants to put in a 200 or square foot deck from the process of going in and clearing up major trees and things like that to get to the 30-foot defensible space? And I don't know. I mean, in a perfect world, I want everybody to have it.
Some of it's probably the administrative burden of the difference between, they're both structural permits for doing an addition or a deck, or is it a site plan review for a deck and a?
Not site plan review, but the building structural permit for,
Yeah.
depending on the design of the deck.
Usually if it's under 18 inches
Inches.
off the ground, you don't need a building permit.
Yeah.
So
Under how much?
if it's 18 inches or below ground,
Oh,
as
yeah.
an owner, you're allowed to just build a deck.
Yeah.
You don't have to get a
Yeah.
permit for that. That's state permit code. So,
Patios only.
yeah,
So
that's a nuance.
my feeling is I'd like something more, I'd like to keep some of this language. I just don't know if, the thing, I was okay with it until you threw the wrench in the ironworks and told me that it applied to a permit pulled for a new deck. Then I was like, oh, crap. There go all the cogs on that wheel.
It could not, so we could include it as drafted, remove the additions from consideration. We could remove decks from consideration. So I think that's the policy decision that's before you. We could remove, that it not apply to any additions as proposed by Councilor Pellerin.
And again, I feel like at the bare minimum, I just kind of want to make sure that 0 to 5 foot zone is taken care of. I mean, obviously, more defensible space would be fantastic. I just don't want anybody building an addition or a new big deck, permitted deck, right up against vegetation and being like, don't have to do it. And you have to remember that there will be a lot of people who currently are and will be complying out of just because of education and goodwill and wanting, and their insurance companies tightening the screws, so it won't be an issue all the time.
Can I suggest that we let this one percolate for a little bit? Because there's some other areas in here that might help alleviate our questions on this and come back to it if people are comfortable with that. So in other words, not come to a definitive decision this second.
It's a low-hanging fruit and.
Yeah, until we go through the low-hanging fruit, and, because I think there is something else in here that kind of addresses some of those issues. And maybe there isn't, maybe I'm just having flashbacks and to my days in college. But I think that I'd like to have us move forward and make some decisions and get somewhere, and then come back to this particular one without burning a lot more clock time, if that's okay with the four of you.
Yes.
I think yeah, and there's, noting that we can continue deliberations to another date, we can certainly leave this as,
Just once we're through the rest of the list.
certainly can leave it as drafted and for consideration later
Sure, yeah.
on another date.
Yeah, and that was kind of where I was challenged, because if I took out decks and room additions, and I'm just thinking a new subdivision going in,
Guess what?
I could have this done, and we, reach
thing.
that part, and we actually will have implemented the code. And then we can come back to the hairy stuff like this, where we kind of make more of a decision around what kind of falls into the existing property owners, which is going to be a challenge. But, yeah.
There's not really a clean way to do that, though, is there? To Counselor Pellerin's comment, or?
We would remove the reference to additions to existing buildings. So it would apply to new subdivisions or redevelopment of an existing lot, a vacant lot, or tear down and replacement.
But
Could
then
we
the
say
question,
something like a defensible space area not limited to, of 5 feet shall be required under applicability for all new buildings, decks, additions to existing buildings, et cetera, or limited, or of 5 feet,
Minimum of?
minimum of 5 feet?
What if we did the minimum of 5 feet for the decks and the room additions?
and 30 for the rest.
And, yeah,
Decks.
because I think that's reasonable for someone to say, okay, I'm adding a room addition, I can plan for the extra 5 feet of space to be cleared around that.
Because if the rest of your house is only 5 feet,
And most of the time when you're building, you're actually excavating
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
5 feet out anyway,
Right,
just
yeah.
to put in footings and things like that. So that makes it, you're tearing up whatever's there anyway.
because I don't want to
You're not
lose,
tearing up
I don't
30
want to
feet.
lose the 30 feet on
No.
new construction.
Right.
So maybe that's the bitter pill we swallow for now, and then we go with the 5 foot around any additions to existing structures. Minimum of 5 foot, no vegetation or something, I don't know.
Whatever we end up with all the other ones.
Yeah, but again, I think that we've kind of all wrapped our head in a circle. And I think it would be better, for me anyway, if we go down through some of the others, then come back to this and let it percolate in the back of my head for a minute. I like what I heard from you, and I think all of you have good points, and I could see all of them. And Gary is confused.
We can
All right.
try. I don't know how far we'll get, because let's just go for it. I'm for it.
Okay, that's fine.
Go for it.
Okay, we'll table that one. Okay, moving to section 37300B, the introductory statement, adding reference to the exceptions opportunity in section 37600. This is just explicitly showing that we do have the defensible space standards, but there are exceptions allowed under those special circumstances identified in the exceptions. We're not contemplating what the exception language is, but rather just simply a reference.
It's a pointer.
That's a pointer.
Yeah.
Which means the one we just got off of, we could keep the 30 and then have exceptions in that language for certain types of minimal additions, et cetera. Maybe? I
Let's
just-
table
I just
that
gave you a heart
discussion
attack,
so we can
okay.
work our way through. That would be a
I saw the
special.
color go out of your face. Okay.
Well, no, I was rewriting the code in my mind. So we would just carve out, we would explicitly say what
Yeah.
defensible space standards apply to additions.
But as written, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
So am I.
Seeing head nods. Okay. Then to 37301 would be adding the prohibition of all dead material, including, for example, ghost trees, decorative stumps, logs, bark mulch, wood chips, etc., within 30 feet of a building. We only have similar standards are only currently applicable to the first 5 feet of a building. This would effectively extend that combustible materials out to 30 feet. Unless I didn't capture that correctly.
For clarification, this is 3.7.300B.1.
I'm sorry.
Correct?
Excuse me. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Okay. I'm yes for new development, not
Yes,
for
we're back in the same place. Yeah. You know, I put out with a very good garden hose, and I should have called you guys because it was much bigger than I thought it was, bark fire under my neighbor's deck a little while ago, a year ago, and he wasn't there. And cigarette butt, and he says, no one smokes at my house. Oh, well. Anyway, and it had gone down, just a little itty bitty spot on the top. I'm sure you've seen that. And as I went down with my shovel, it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the steam, if I watered it, the steam came off. So my point is, bark mulch in your house is a bad idea, period. And when I was in the valley where it's wet, I was putting it out on the building I ran on a daily basis.
I'm okay at 5 feet.
Yeah, I'm not,
So I guess I'm a no to this change.
Yeah, this is all very flammable stuff, and 5 feet is,
And it moves.
and it creates embers really close to your house. In your neighbor's house. Yeah, this is just, the recommendations from all the professional fire organizations. Bark mulch will spontaneously combust.
Yes, it
in
does.
this environment.
Yep.
I've seen it over and over and over again here, so.
I'm still a no on that one.
And why is that?
I'm just not prepared to say within 30 feet of the building. It's not that I am against science, and it's not that I don't believe that that's what science says. I am with Counselor Michael here. I'm sorry, I forgot his
okay.
last name in the moment.
Michael is fine.
Yeah, Counselor Michael. I did feel like we were starting with the most stringent code in the state, and I think that's a place to start, and I'm comfortable with that. So that's where I am. Yeah.
I think this code was modeled a lot off of Ashland's, and Ashland's is relatively dated. There's been a lot of science that's come out in the last, 5 to 10 years.
I understand, but I do get to have my own.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not saying that I wouldn't change it in a year or two, but at this point, I'm ready to just see how this transpires.
Yeah, I feel that, my interest in getting this, as clean as possible is that, we have a lot of work to do ahead with annexation, and new development, and being ready and prepared in the beginning so that developers, know what they have to work with, and trying to kind of do this retroactively would be very, very difficult to do. So I'm just trying to get this homework done.
So you're a yes?
Yeah.
You're a yes?
I am a yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay,
yes.
you guys, I'd like to get through this, we don't have to explain, I understand what you're doing, I get it, but I'd like to get through this. So we got 2 no's and a yes. No one's gonna get mad.
I'm actually a yes on this one because I've seen and have experienced what bark mulch does. If it just said ghost trees, decorative stumps, and logs, I would be a little bit happier, but wood chips and bark mulch, I've seen it. And on buildings that I've had to maintain as well as next door to my house. So I don't like it. That's why 30's fine with me, 20's okay, 10's better than nothing, 5's not enough.
Okay, 2 and 2. You get to decide.
Don't
Well-
do that to her.
I started this off with a yes for new buildings. not extensions. This is why I keep coming back to that. Unfortunately, that's just the way my brain works.
Well, maybe we put new construction, I'll prevent all dead material within 30 feet
Yeah, that's a no-brainer for me.
of new construction. Kind of what we were talking about is if this applies to the development code, someone comes in and pulls a permit to build something, they've got bare ground or dirt, they bulldozed it, they've got a mess, don't put bark mulch down. We're not talking about, I come back to, we're not talking about existing property unless we kick in that one we're coming back to play with some more. And so, am I incorrect in thinking that?
You are not, but this notion of including or not including additions and decks will continue to come up.
I know.
And we're writing unique code, which can be fine, but it was a total rewrite. If we're writing code for additions and then entirely new construction, which is fine, but the complexity of the code, the variations are increasing. And we're always going to go back. So I know we tried to move on from the additions and decks, but I think we just, frankly, I think that needs to be hammered out now before we apply it. That's my suggestion, because every one of these components are going to go back to, unless it's an addition or a deck.
And all of these things are problematic in one way or another. We're talking about saving water by putting in landscaping that is drought tolerant, and which may mean landscape that's not necessarily fire tolerant. We're talking about smaller lot sizes. We're talking about trying to have smaller homes and these sorts of things. All this stuff kind of goes back and forth between the need to keep the town safe. And, boy, I'll tell you, my head's swimming, but I'm with you. When I read this through, after I talked to you on the phone this morning and saw this as new development code, I was fine with pretty much everything that was on here, with a few exceptions. When we start talking about existing structures, it becomes trickier.
All due respect, we're not talking about existing structures, we're talking about new construction. And that does include new construction in the form of an addition to an existing building.
Exactly, that's what I'm referring to.
So is a couple different options on that Matt suggested is there's a separate section within chapter 3.7 where it's additions to existing structures and have separate requirements under that section.
We can do that?
Or strip it out and that have a separate discussion about adding that section at a later date. Have that policy conversation down the road for anything, for the 200 square feet and above, new construction.
I think that for this, the sake of time, if we limit our discussion to new construction with the understanding that we have to come back and make new code for additions, decks to existing structures, I'm all for that. I think that I always was under the impression this was only new construction and only going to be new construction because we're trying to stay ahead of UGB expansion and annexation and bigger neighborhoods coming because we're running out of space for that. There isn't space for a new neighborhood hardly at all anywhere in town. And so I'm all for that. And so we can limit our thinking to, hey, we're talking about new construction with the understanding we got a lot more work to do, of course.
And
I really like the way you phrased it and said, look, we do want to affect existing structures and existing decks, but I think it's a much more complex issue than
yes,
going piece by piece and trying to do it at the same time with new construction, because they're two separate items.
and they're two separate types of lot preparation too. There's
I think so.
significant differences.
And, to the mayor's point, I want very good defensible space code that makes a lot of sense. And I don't mind if it's the most stringent thing in the state. I'm not against having high standards. We do it with all the decisions we make up here. And so by excluding existing decks or additions over 200 square feet, it doesn't mean we're ignoring it, we're just tabling it so we can get through the meat that we have today. That's how I feel about it.
And I wanted to clarify that I heard from our city manager and saw sort of a head nod from our presenter that that would be an appropriate way to proceed. And then when we waded into that with the 200 square foot, whatever the number is, addition to existing property, and we look at some of these standards, that's where we have the ability to apply some moderation if that's what makes sense to this council, but keeping the strict standards for everything that's coming into the city from here on out. We've got to start somewhere, and I think trying to do the whole city, which is kind of what I feel like this is in essence doing in the background, we're not going to get there. And I think we have too many divergent opinions on how to go about that, and that's not a bad thing. That's why there's 5 of us up here. So I think that I like that idea of making this apply to new development, new building, i.e. structures. And I know I'm using the words that are all the same thing to you, but taking off the additions in the 200 square feet from some of the more, onerous is the wrong word, some of the more strict components of this particular rewrite. And dealing with those, and I don't want us to kick it down the road a year, dealing with those perhaps once we get this settled in and starting to look at where we go next on the next steps. And especially if we've done some educating with the community on the things that, as we're doing right now, as these gentlemen are doing, and of what kind of things need to be done, some of these will make sense to a homeowner. Right now, I think it sounds like, what are you doing to me? And so that's where I am on this.
I mean, you guys are the code writers, they're attorneys, so if it's not if that doesn't make sense, or there's, some fatal flaws in that idea, but you could reserve a, subsection within the and come back. And and I hear you, we don't want to kick the can on this stuff, but reserve a section there, and we come back and have a work session about just requirements for additions to existing structures, and then go through kind of the same, what's in the 5 feet, what's in the 30 feet, when does this apply?
And that could go before the planning commission.
Sure.
Some public input.
And I think having
which
the
addresses
overlay
our
of new by itself will give us places to compare and go, do we want it the same? Fine. Do we want it different, more stringent? Do we want it more relaxed? And I think that this process is helping us develop that. I mean, no one else is going to do it. We're doing it, right? So
Got me thinking.
let's get one piece of it nailed, and then if you can hold a subsection over and we have another ordinance that fills that subsection in 5 months from now, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world.
Councilor Peller said it well for me. She said, when I thought this was just applying to new developments, new construction within those developments, I was fine with it. I could write down check. That's where I was this morning.
So at a point of,
About an hour ago, it totally got blown up and sank into the ocean, and now I'm in a life raft.
All right, Matt.
well, point of clarification, we're talking about existing vacant lots in existing parts of town, not just a lot of talk about potential expansion areas. I want to make
I
sure.
understand that, but.
I just want to be clear, because
all
we're
new-
dissecting this
All
into
new
different.
construction. I'm not separating potential UGB land out from potential vacant lots in the city. They're all the same thing in my head. I think what I heard is that we hope to add a significant amount of land to the city for housing and other development. We want to be sure these standards are in place before any type of construction occurs. And that also includes on the vacant lot next to my house.
Yeah,
So can we efficiently separate that out where it doesn't give you a lot of headache, or are we just causing more problems in another area at this moment?
It would require some rewriting of the code. And what I'm also hearing is to extract the applicability of this to any additions to structures. I mean, that's striking it from the code. It's done, it's fixed. We can then, after the fact, come in and add a separate section. That certainly can be included in the code.
That would be my preference.
So we're back to that conversation, so we have perhaps, of whether or not additions and decks should be included.
You should ask, should we poll the group?
Mayor?
My vote, or you want me to poll? You want the poll?
If
You
you
have a
would like
poll.
me to poll the counselors, I'm
No,
happy
that's
to do
fine.
that.
I'll do it.
Can we repeat one more time
Yeah, what's the question?
what we're answering to?
I understand that we're back to whether additions and decks exceeding 200 square feet should be, the dispensable space standards should apply to those.
I think what we were asking, should we pull that from the code at this point in time? And then come back and look at it as a second section? I mean, that's the clarity of my, I understand what you're saying. You're giving it to me in the actual terms that you need to give it to me. But what I hear and what I heard from this group is, should we remove that from this consideration right now and come back and visit it later? That's the poll I'm asking to be taken.
You take that out of this text amendment, we'd come
Yes.
back with another text amendment with that subsection and have a
Yes.
whole conversation just about the 200 square
Are we
feet.
going to still go through this, though?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I do want to settle these things as well.
Yeah.
I vote yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I agree with that. Sorry for the extra work.
Well, and I also feel like if there's, if we do the rest of our work and we alter municipal code, I mean, a lot of this is going to get taken care of in that
Right.
as well.
So,
I mean, and yeah,
I think it's just simplicity's sake to not talk about it the rest of the night would be great.
yeah,
Just so we can get through this, I think.
yes, I'm there. And so I think that, like I said, in my mind, when I read this over, thinking we were
Yeah.
dealing with new construction, I was fine. And I know new construction, you mean something different than me, but
So now, removing any consideration of additions or decks as we move forward with the applicability standards, these would apply to all new construction, new buildings.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to clarify. So one of the words in here is detached accessory structures. Are we talking about if an ADU is built on a lot where there is an existing building, are we keeping that piece?
That's a new structure.
That's a new structure.
I think
Okay,
in
I just
my
want,
head
I
it
just want to
is.
be very clear that we're keeping that.
yes.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Now moving to section 37300B3. This,
Nope.
yes, thank you.
I don't know if we finished B1 yet, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I was wondering if we should just go back to 3.7, 300A and just give our yeses and our nos here now.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
So we're going to remove the wording
For
Doesn't
deck,
exist.
addition,
deck in addition to an existing building.
Yep.
so 37300A, if we're talking new construction, I'm good with.
Yep.
The 30 feet.
The 30 feet or
Or-
extend to the property line.
Whichever is less.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Forgive me, I thought that was implied with the agreement on the additions, so.
It's just our brains.
So we got 5 yeses on that one? Or
Yes.
4?
yeah, because that was
5?
additions.
Okay,
Okay.
All right.
Boy, see? There we go.
okay, so as shown on the slide, thank you, Rebecca. So section 37300B3, this is applying to the
We're
allowance of
going back to B1.
We just did.
No, that
B1?
was A1.
B1.
That was
Oh,
A.
B1 was dev materials, blah, 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 within 30 feet of the building. We said yes, that would be acceptable.
Okay.
If it was
We're all
new
good on that.
construction.
Yeah, I'm changing mine from a no because now I know it's just new construction.
Okay,
So I'm a yes on that
Yeah.
as well.
okay.
So am I.
You too.
So that's 300 B1, okay.
Yes.
All right, I'm just keeping track too.
I'll abstain.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's a 4-0.
Okay,
300B3.
Okay.
This is directed at retaining significant trees within the initial 5-foot zone next to a building. One recommendation is to remove the allowance for retaining existing significant trees. Another is to allow those significant trees to be retained if they're not on the prohibited flammable plant list that are 20 inches DBH or greater.
And that was something I suggested or talked to.
Yeah,
others
and
about.
the reference to the prohibited flammable plant list, I believe there's a caveat that ponderosas are removed from the prohibited flammable plant list, as
Even
well
though
as
they're
western larch.
We
Yeah.
talked about removed, but they're still on the list that you provided to us.
Correct.
Yeah. And my argument for the 20 DBH, that comes from my time on the Urban Forestry Board, where we spent a lot of time talking about maintaining significant trees. A tree of approximately 20-inch DBH is going to have a ponderosa, high enough limb count, if you limb it up, and thick enough bark that it should not, unless you get a crowning fire, providing you do the limbing up, whatever the height is, what they recommended, 8 feet or 10 feet, something like that, and it's not over the structure. That allows us to provide guidance that those trees need to be retained by a developer who might wish to take them down, and said, well, the code said I had to. So.
Yeah, and our worry about, like Gary and I talked about this, our worry about 8 inches was that if it's 8 inches, it's gonna grow. As it grows wider, it's gonna get closer and closer to the house, and
Plus, its canopy is going to be significantly closer to the ground. So-
usually the roots will start taking out your foundations.
So that was why I came up with that number. I mean, it could be smaller. Wouldn't recommend bigger, but in order to retain as many significant trees in our community as we can. And I'm thinking primarily about those infill lots that we've been discussing, or property that may have trees on it that might eventually be developed.
So again, we do have a competing recommendation to just prohibit all significant trees regardless of species or size within the initial 5 feet.
If we're talking about new construction, any tree within 5 feet is going to have to be removed because the roots are too close to the house when you're trying to pour concrete footings. There's almost, even pondees, I think their roots go out far enough that if you're building within 5 feet of it, you're going to get into this root ball, right? So I think
Well, how close was the tree that was removed in Woodlands? You recall? I'm looking at Paul, that big one that came down, how close it was.
I don't think that was, yeah.
Yeah, anyway.
So I'm just saying, from a construction standpoint, almost any tree within 5 feet, that's kind of like the bare minimum, even for a small tree, keeping it when you're doing it. So prohibiting trees within 5 feet of new construction is not that big a deal, because you're going to have to take it out anyway just to put in a concrete footing.
I would prefer not to prohibit them, and that would be the decision of the developer.
Yeah.
That's Sarah's opinion.
Yeah, I think that's fine too. I mean, if you kept the exception for 20-inch trees, I'm telling you, those are big trees, and if it's within 5 feet of the house, it's probably going to have to be removed anyway, because you're going to kill it accidentally. You know what I mean? So I get it. I think we can use that. I would agree to that rule, but I don't think it's ever going to happen, because you're either going to have to change the footprint of the building, or it's going to have to come down. And it'll end up not being 5 feet if they change the footprint of the building.
This could be for things that might not damage it, like decks, or, because that is included in the footprint of a building.
Yeah.
What I hear is that there is no, again, I'm putting on my Urban Forestry Board hat, and I look at the 2.5 years of work that went into that group to protect trees such as this. I think having this language in here, even though they may have to take the tree out because the root's going to be destroyed because it's within 5 feet, it still
Gives them a chance.
It gives them a chance, and it also reflects that work of that other advisory committee us did over 2.5 years. And
I'm okay.
it's important to me.
I'm okay with that.
But I hear what you're saying too, Michael. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah. It has to fit all the other criteria, though.
Yeah.
Which is,
Yep.
The crown has to be not close to the fire, the chimney, 10 feet above the roof, whatever. I'm okay with that. The middle one. Because it's just, like I said, I don't think it's going to happen.
And well, and it says if approved by the fire code official. And
Yeah,
so by-
somebody's got to look at it.
Yeah, so I think we've got that covered, and that just, again, it may be useless language in there. I hear what you're saying, but I want to give recognition to the work that group did extensively on protecting the tree canopy within the community.
Okay.
And that's the one I would like to see.
Councilor Pellerin?
When a developer submits their tree plan, do they typically leave trees within 5 feet of the buildings, the homes?
I would say in most instances, your area that's disturbed by the preparation of the site, the preparation of the footings and foundation would involve disturbing the initial 5 feet. So if I were to see a plan that had trees removed we have a preservation of significant tree standard in our code now. If I saw a tree within 5 feet and it's slated for removal, I wouldn't think too much about it, because knowing that it's so close to the structure that its health has been compromised, or it's too close to accommodate the development. So,
And again, patios and decks are considered part of the structure per this code, so, it won't always be a death sentence.
Right. And I think what I'm saying is that we don't say the 5 feet is not in the language of the second one. 5 feet's in the language of the first. 5 feet is not in the language of the second. And I know we have the 5-foot non-burnable area and all those things, but if they're building a new house in a wooded area and they're putting on a deck as part of that construction, that tree could sit next to the deck, because the deck construction would not disturb the roof wall. If it's within where the foundation's going in, yeah. So I come back to, I don't see where there's any danger to our leaving that language in here. And depending upon the tree plan that's done when a development is submitted, and that work to protect those significant trees where it can.
Yeah, I have a neighbor that, redid his, I don't know how it works, but he explained it to me and it made sense at the time, but he was able to rework his footings to allow for a tree to stay. And if they're able to do that, that's great with me. If not, I get it.
Right, I mean,
Yep,
I'm not
I'm
going to
just
go out there
saying.
and chain myself to the tree and say, you can't take it down. What I'm trying to do, again, is to try not to step on the toes of work that we've already done, especially in Arbor Day Proclamation Week, and allow for those to be.
A lot of times you can do your footing around the tree, but the roof goes straight across, and that would put it within 5 feet.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'd like to see this language stay. That's where I am. I'm a yes on the center section, because I wrote it.
I'm a yes on it as well.
I think you wrote it.
Yes, for
I'm a yes.
center.
I'm a yes for the centered.
Okay.
There you go.
okay, so acknowledging that, the initial or first item of removing the allowance is not supported based on that outcome. Just wanted to confirm that.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. The third item is add a prohibition of overhanging vegetation within 5 feet of a building.
I'm a yes.
Yes.
I guess I just need a visual on this, like how,
I think a good example is a 20-inch ponderosa pine within 5 feet of a structure is not consistent with this standard.
A 20-inch or an 8-inch?
Any tree,
Any tree, yeah.
because it's within 5 feet of the structure. So these two items conflict.
Okay.
yeah.
The clearance doesn't matter. The overhang is anywhere above.
This says, Yep.
Demonstrates required 10 feet of clearance above a roof is what it says, right?
this says of any overhanging vegetation within 5 feet of the building. So that's.
Oh,
5 feet.
That's your
Sideways.
33.7.300?
Yeah.
I thought we just adopted
The middle one.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Just need confirmation that what you just voted on or recommended is in conflict with this prohibition.
Yeah, that's correct.
Which is okay.
Yeah.
Let's just note that, that's an okay
If I want the
decision.
middle one, then we can't have the third one. So if I'm a yes on the middle one, I'm a no on the third one.
That's
Correct.
And I'm okay with that decision. Because we have the height standards, limiting standards.
10 feet.
The
I'm okay
the
with that,
graphics that we don't have in this packet, but we know are included in the code.
So with that clarification, I'm a no.
Yeah, on that language, I'm a no, especially when we get to the next one, which is 10 feet of clearance above a roof.
Yeah.
Move ahead.
So to say it differently, we had three options there. Not allow retaining vegetation, allow retention of 20 inch or greater, non-prohibited flammable species within the 5 feet, and
Which is two
In-
species.
in favor of, that's the one supported.
All right, and I'm going to just add something to make it more complicated, because this is what this evening's about. If your tree is 6 feet from the building, but it has a lot of overhanging branches that are overhanging into the 5-foot zone, I mean, I'm assuming that's also what's being addressed by this.
But can it, if we look ahead where we've got the 10 feet above the roof and 10 feet from the furthest extension? Did that take care of
Does that
that?
take care of it?
Yeah, I thought the graphics that we had previously saw took care of that.
Yeah, so what would be allowed is any existing tree
Some ground.
would need to provide horizontal clearance of 10 feet from a building. That'd be inflammable vegetation, would need to provide 10 feet of horizontal clearance, 10 feet of vertical clearance from a roof, and 10 feet of all clearance from
10
any
feet of
chimney.
horizontal clearance.
If that covers that, then we don't need the third one, which is the
Correct.
Right.
okay.
Although,
Back where we were.
sorry,
Well, what you're describing is what you just said, if it's 6 feet away, it still has to be 10 feet from the building, at least the overhanging part. The trunk itself is okay at 6 feet, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I think we're okay with that. I'm okay with
That
that.
was what I heard just now. Which means we actually are requiring greater language than the 5 feet, if we allow that, because of the 10 feet vertical clearance.
Correct.
I'm okay with that.
but it does say existing trees which are species identified on the prohibited flammable plant list have to follow the 10 feet, yada, yada, yada. Wouldn't we want that to be all trees then?
We're still on the first one, right? Or we?
Sorry.
Do you have enough yeses on the first one?
Are we in B3?
What, give us a number.
B5.
We're in,
Bingo.
okay, so
No.
we've finished.
Oh, I thought we were still in B3.
Okay.
Well, I think that what you just said, read that again.
So this is kind of in relationship to the third one of B3, where we're concerned about the vegetation within 5 feet. We're saying, well, we've got, coming up here in section B5, the whole 10 feet clearance. However, that section 5 says those trees, existing trees that are on the flammable plant list only.
Separate section, subsection 7 applies to fire-resistant trees, those not on the list. So there is language specific.
That's where the 10 by 10 comes in.
Oh, okay.
10 feet
Thank you.
clearance from the chimney outlet,
So
and
it is
that
there. Okay.
no vegetation can be touching the structure. This was presented at the
You
public hearing.
only exist to confuse the daylights out of common citizens.
Let's take them one at a time.
We're fine.
Yeah,
I'm fine.
yeah. So where are we at?
3.7.3, unless the mayor has something she wants to discuss on
B3, you mean?
B3. So I'm ready to go to B5, but I'm not sure that the mayor is.
Just making sure, I mean, I think so, but yeah, let's just go to B5.
Okay,
First item under B5 is to add a graphic that demonstrates required 10-foot of clearance above a roof.
okay,
Yes.
The ordinance
Yes.
included the graphics, just didn't include this graphic.
yes.
Or and I was the one who put that in here, but I'm also fine with not having a graphic.
Oh, I like a graphic.
Okay,
I wanna
we
make it
need
make
pictures for
More
you.
graphics.
We like,
Okay,
I'm really dumb, I need a graphic.
we're gonna make Joe do graphics, he's gotta do graphics too.
Next item under this section is remove allowance of retaining existing trees on the flammable plant list within 30 feet of a building.
I had a question mark on this because I wasn't, for some reason,
So we're saying only ponderosa pines and the larches, what's the other one called? There's two species that are non-flammable trees, right? Ponderosa pine,
There are many non-flammable species. We have a short list of flammable trees that are listed, but it's been proposed later on to remove from the listed pines to then allow ponderosas and western larch.
okay.
Right, so within the 30 feet, you could have an apple tree or,
You can?
Or serviceberry,
yeah, serviceberry or,
which I have.
yeah, it's just saying you need to remove the trees that are on the prohibited flammable plant list.
Okay.
Um,
I'm okay with that.
There's lots of trees that, you can
Yep.
still have in that area.
I was thinking somebody was trying to limit it to only two kinds of trees within 30
No.
feet, and that would just be a little,
Yeah.
not serious. Okay. I'm good with that, yes.
I am too.
I'm good with that.
This is where I get into I wish we had public input on these pieces. I just feel like
You haven't heard enough from the public?
I'm not savvy enough to make this kind of decision without more input. I mean, I don't, I prefer to hear more than less, and so for me, I'm not here yet. So it's a no for me.
And I appreciate that. I think that, for me, with some building experience, and Michael's seen this with planning on lots, and you've seen it, again, when we're talking strictly new construction,
No,
I know what you're saying, but what I'm thinking in my head is that.
I would
is that-
like to hear from wildlife people, I guess.
Yeah.
And so that's why I prefer no for Sarah.
I don't disagree with that,
Yeah.
actually.
So, anyway.
Anybody else?
I'm trying to tie this to the actual code that we were given. Can you specifically tell me what sentences we're removing? Which number, letter?
This is effectively a rewrite because we allowed retention of prohibited flammable plants within the 30 feet, subject to the clearance requirements, the 10 feet of clearance from the structure, from the roof, among other management. And so what this would strike that allowance.
So if you had a significant tree that was not a tree that's on the prohibited list, so you can have a really large spruce tree, but if it's within 30 feet of,
See you later.
yeah,
Shall be removed.
or
A lot
Doug
of those in
fir.
town.
Or it couldn't be planted.
And I don't know how many in our inventory we actually have that on undeveloped lands right now, but, and again, this is all for new development, right? Because we took out that other section. or that
Right,
other
so I think when we talk
applicability.
about later.
That
we
would
may
be
have
something
to-
that, yeah, you might want to talk about more with the other section on additions.
Because my view, and I actually heard what you said about the wildlife issue, and my view on that is that when we have new development and the land's cleared and the building's built and the trees are planted, I'm hoping that this encourages more deciduous type plantings within the community that are very bird friendly with berries and things like that. Nothing's better than a bunch of drunk robins when all of the berries ferment. It's quite a sight.
Are you, do you have a decision, Cheryl, or are you still thinking?
Sorry, so it says, remove provision allowing retention of existing trees. So we're removing something that
Right here.
was here at one
It's
point.
this,
5,
yeah,
existing trees which are specified in
that provision would be removed.
the whole section.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
We're making it more stringent.
Okay, I have to abstain.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay,
Well, I'm a yes on that.
and I'm a yes.
I'm a yes.
There you go. You got 3 yeses.
Okay, moving to subsection 309 and 10 for this matter. This is pertaining to shrubs. Way the code is proposed originally, distinguish between prohibited flammable shrubs and not flammable shrubs. As recommended for consideration is allow groupings of no more than 3 shrubs can only be a maximum of 10 feet wide and must be 10 feet apart from other plantings, and prohibits shrubs under or near trees.
So that would be added to the existing language?
That
Or
would
be
replace.
replacing?
It apply to all shrubs instead of distinguishing between.
So it doesn't say remove on the document you sent us. It says add. And what I'm hearing you say is it would replace.
Can you advance the slide, please, on your? Thank you.
So, and I'm not picking at you.
No, it's okay. This was a recommendation by the mayor that was incorporated into the rewrite of the code, which included several new elements. And so what I wanted was, as I prepared the table, was just to acknowledge that we have these existing sections that apply to shrubs. These are very different than what's in the existing
So this
proposed
would be
standards.
Section
So,
C or D of that particular number 9?
no, it's a very different standard. So I would be
It would be
looking to kind of incorporating it into the section.
It would be a new standard with a new number.
Forgive me, I did not contemplate what exactly it'd be, what component of it.
Okay.
So for one example, 9B, for existing listed flammable species.
Yep.
Requires that they shall be a minimum of 2 times the shrub's height at maturity, separated 2 times the height of the shrub at maturity. The proposed language differs from that standard. So what I'm looking for is agreement that this construct that's proposed should be incorporated into this section. We're conflicting with what's proposed originally, we'd be replacing that.
Okay.
I mean,
So
I don't-
add or replace, all right, I got it.
I don't remember
My brain needs to work.
word for word what I submitted, but I'm looking over my notes, because it says, number 9 says existing shrubs which are species on the prohibited flammable plant list shall be maintained, et cetera, 5 feet clearance from newest building. I mean, it's going back to that 0 to 30, the same thing with the trees above. It's like, if they're on the prohibited plant list, then they shouldn't be allowed in the 0 to 30. I think that's, I thought that was what I submitted, but I could be wrong, so I apologize if that's not. It's just, mirroring the same theory on the trees, is that there shouldn't be anything on the prohibited plant list from 0 to 30. And this one's kind of giving you rules on how to trim plants that are on the prohibited list, which are between 0 and 30, is the way I read it.
Okay, so if that's the recommendation well, as originally listed, it said no plants listed on the flammable plant list within 5 to 30 feet, full
Right.
stop. So this would be, those species not listed would be subject to these standards.
So the language of 9, existing such which are species listed on city's prohibited flammable plant list, which we've already said we weren't going to allow somewhere else, that language would be removed and it would be replaced with shrubs on the, whatever it is, allowed shrubs or whatever the word is you wish to use, would have the further language. Because we've already prohibited non-flammable plants. Correct?
Well, we were talking about trees earlier, but
Well,
yeah, so here's the
shrubs as
confirmation,
well. I
yeah.
mean,
So,
Putting a manzanita bush underneath my ponder might not be a good idea.
existing, but, okay, so, yeah, confirmation or clarification, if, yeah, with the previous recommendations that we remove retention of all flammable shrubs within 30 feet, then that would eliminate subsection 9.
And you'd replace it with the language of subsection 9, 3.7.9 that you have on the table.
Yep, we would incorporate
You'd
the.
work that into
Yep.
something, yeah. Okay, now I understand.
Matt, can you just clarify for me? So number 9, like the language and the code that's in here, for example, and I guess I've just been getting a little lost in this, but these standards came from the IBHS, is that correct? Or you use the IBHS suggestions to develop what's here now? Is that correct? It was one- it
IBHS
was
recommendations were one resource that was contemplated in developing these criteria.
Thank you.
This particular standard was not a reflection of those recommendations that I identified. But what it comes down to is if the actual groupings language, the separation of the groupings, and the prohibition of shrubs under or near trees, if that's supported, we can fold that into the subsection 10, which would allow, well, these are for newly planted shrubs. So we would need to rewrite section 9, 10, and 11 to reflect these changes. Because those are the 3 sections that apply to shrubs. So forgive me for probably confusing the matter even further. I think the notion is if these groupings and separation and location requirements are supported by council.
Mayor, did you, and those groupings, are these something you recommended?
Yeah.
On 9 and 10?
9 was, my number one thing with 9 was that there shouldn't be anything on the prohibited flammable plant list within 0 to 30 feet.
Yeah, so that would eliminate 9 and 10. They're both apply.
I mean, I think 10.
Can we do with that without the grouping language, or? I mean, the grouping thing is just kind of confusing to me, and it seems a little burdensome to somebody who's, even to contractors, you know what I mean? It's kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it is really common to have grouping space.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess.
In,
I mean, I'm okay with the prohibition of no flammable stuff in the 30-foot fine. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
yeah.
You know, the standards will be the standards, and the contractors will get used to it. That's kind of, it's new construction, that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah,
And if you're supportive of the kind of the general concept, we can build this into the draft language, bring it back, and ensure that it captures exactly what you're after. This is a rewrite section.
Yeah, I'm kind of like a soft yes, because I want to read it again in its next form, whatever that is.
Right.
yeah. And I think that due to the changes we made previously, if we need to bump back up to item number 7 and number 8, well, number 8, I think it just needs to be omitted because it's dealing with how to prune prohibited flammable trees in areas they're not, we decided they're not supposed to be, so I think we can just remove that.
That would be part of the overall rewrite, because yes, you've acknowledged that listed flammable species are not allowed within 30 feet.
Yeah,
Full
okay.
stop.
And then a number 7, and I apologize if I didn't submit these, I thought I did, but instead of saying fire-resistant trees, number 7 probably should just start with just trees. Because we kind of eliminated kind of the terminology around fires resistant. And I can call
Do
it
you want
break.
to take a break? You want to
Yeah,
call it a
I
break?
mean, yeah, I'd be happy to.
5 or 10 minutes. just
Yeah,
so people
please.
know that. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I was,
I wasn't
I-
going to last any longer, so I had to go.
I asked her if you wanted a break. We will adjourn and return at 40 after 7.
That would be
40, yeah,
7:40.
Recording stopped.
yeah, I know, it's fancy talk.
Yeah, no,
All right, we'll get
Recording
back at
in
it again.
progress.
Oh, thank you. All right, thank you for your patience. Just discussing our options moving forward with staff. You know, we can keep plowing through this. I think some of these, you know, in some regards have already, in one way or another, been addressed, and there's, might be the chance for it to move faster. Or we can kind of pick a place to stop for time, continue deliberation, also discuss the option that, you know, seeing that we are altering and changing a number of things, it was suggested one opportunity we would have is to just, next time this comes in front of us, reopen the public hearing portion, because I know that was one concern of yours. And I, you know, in consultation with staff as well, it's like we don't, you know, it's an expectation that, you know, whatever planning council, the PC, Planning Commission sees, you know, there's a chance that we, as council, might change things. You know, so it does not have to be word for word what they see and agree on and what we see and agree on, you know, it's a process, so. So, yeah, those are some options in front of us, so, I mean, I know that you had some issues around, concerns around public input. Is that something you feel like next time this comes in front of us, that we open up the public hearing again and give more opportunity for the public to kind of read some of the changes and comment? Or do you need them to explain this better than I can to explain it?
I'm not sure, are we finished, and I'm just.
No, I'm just trying to kind of.
And Matt, you're going to make more changes, and then we look at it again? I'm just trying to follow what that next time would be.
Yeah, I think.
Is it going to be 12, or is it starting from the beginning again?
So, what, in either instance, what my intent would be to come back with incorporating the changes that were supported here tonight, all right? Come back with the actual text, with red line, adding it to the proposed amendment, so that can be seen in that format and then it's whether or not we simply continue deliberations to a decision, and we'd have those before you, or an opportunity to reopen the public hearing for at least an opportunity for public testimony.
I think I just want to clarify something. I mean, I'm okay if on each of these I'm outvoted 4-1. That doesn't make me uncomfortable at all. I just feel like I need to be clear about why I'm saying no. And so I'm okay with going forward. I don't have any negative feelings about that. I just want to have the chance to explain where I'm coming from. And I think we should just continue on.
Yeah, and there's no particular, procedural requirement to reopen the public hearing. It's just a matter of kind of
Yeah.
considering if the changes are warrant, soliciting additional public.
We don't even have to decide that right now, I don't think.
No. Correct.
So let's, yeah.
I
say
really
let's
think that
turn the
I'm
button.
feeling more comfortable with the discussion we had about really looking to the new, I hate to use the word new construction because you see it differently than I, but what I'm viewing as new buildings going up.
Okay.
And then coming back and taking some other looks and getting a lot of input on how we start to apply this to homeowners.
And the other is noting that we're about halfway through the table with most of the substance addressed, but we don't know what's going to inspire the additional discussion. So it's a recognition of the time. That's the commitment it's been tonight.
So, and where are we at?
What number?
Yeah. I'd like
Last
to
we
be
were-
really clear about what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we left off at shrubs under sections 309, 10, and ultimately 11. 9 and 10 allow for flammable plant species to be retained or planted. Consistent with what you said before, you wouldn't allow flammable species at all anyway in these areas, so we would strike 9 and 10 and incorporate these changes into section 11.
And I think I said yes to that.
So, or
So let's get,
11.
sections for non-listed species of shrubs. I follow.
So that moves us to 13?
That moves us to 11.
There is no 11.
11 saying change number formatting, moving subsection
Under the
11 to the
original-
line below.
On the ordinance, we had the graphics on there, it wasn't formatted correctly. We'll make that change.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
So we're on to 13.
I'm okay with the change.
Okay, let's go to 13 if we're past 11
I'm,
or 10, 9, 10.
So,
I apologize. I'm confused on what happened with 9 and 10. I'm sorry. We're removing 9.
We're removing
so-
the language of 9 and 10 and replacing it with the language of the table.
yeah, so 9 and 10 were directly related to allowing flammable plant species.
So removing the allowable flammable plant species, and then it gets to 9 and 10 would be added to where those are. With a new number and a new name and a new place and a new address. Yes, this,
Removing and then adding this.
yeah, so
Okay,
we're
got it.
removing this in here
Yeah,
and adding this.
yeah, got it. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Move on.
13, new section. This would prohibit firewood storage within 30 feet of a building unless fully enclosed in a fire-resistant structure.
So we're talking about new building
Yes.
development.
Yes.
Does firewood come with a new building?
Well, that's what I'm
It's-
wondering, how many fireplaces are gonna come, but if they should, somebody may wanna have a fireplace in their house. We're
not- yeah, and-
But I
But
can't have you do that.
Is it the right place to have it in development code? Where you put your firewood?
Yes.
That a developer needs to know
It
that?
can be appropriate in that it's a site development standard, separation
Okay.
or location of particular features of a development. So it is appropriate if you want to include it there, want to include it as a requirement.
So maybe maybe a developer is going to build a little nook in the porch for firewood. That's why we have to address it here.
Correct.
So it's completely enclosed.
Or,
So for like custom homes, speaking from experience,
They
a
like-
lot of times we do a box on the outside of the house, it has a metal lid on it, and it has the same siding as the house, which is fire protective, usually hardy siding. or something similar.
For firewood storage.
And you can even have a little door between the box and the inside that's next to the fireplace. That would be enclosed, as opposed to stacked up on the porch like that house on Jefferson used to have. Like it was floor to ceiling, tinder box, ready to go anytime a member went in there, so I'm okay with this.
So this is really about the structure of firewood storage.
Really, it is, yeah.
Well,
And the
just
separate,
ensuring
and the
it-
location.
But anything can go in there, not just firewood, right? Anything, any flammable thing can go in a fire-resistant structure. So
Yeah,
it
saying-
kind of means anything, but firewood, because it's already dry and usually sitting outside, I've got some stacked up outside my house. I don't think it's 30 feet, I think it's 20, but it's stacked up against my tool shed. Probably wouldn't be allowed in the new zone,
Already told my wife we're taking it off the porch.
so. But I'm okay with that. I mean, we're talking about building a nice structure so
and I think storage is also, I mean, that's just a stack of wood. You're storing wood, I think, is that, the confusion is storage kind of implies a building, but you can't, it's basically saying you can't just have a
Stack of wood.
Stack of wood within 30 feet of your house unless it's enclosed in something.
Unless it's protected.
Okay, so
It could be prohibit firewood within, forget the firewood storage, prohibit firewood within 30 feet of the building unless in a fully enclosed fire-resistant structure.
Yeah, and this is consistent with your previous recommendation that all dead material, so.
Firewood, technically.
So this.
you take the word storage out of that that beginning of that sentence. Prohibit exposed firewood, I guess. Stacked firewood.
I think what this provides is further design requirement that it be, if you're going to have it, it's going to be within a fire-resistant enclosure.
Just get the wording right.
So, we have citizens that rely on wood stoves for heat. In the middle of winter, when fire risk is low, would it make sense to not require those people to walk 30 feet if they couldn't afford a fire-protected shed in the dead of winter to go get their wood so they could be warm? Could we clarify this or add to it when the fire risk is high or extreme?
Or fire season.
Yeah, and that's.
Fire season.
Yeah, I mean, we can go to the Forest Service website to see that, because they'll rate Deschutes County. I'm just thinking about those people that are going to have to trudge through 30 feet.
Well, yeah, and
Okay.
again, that's, for the most case, that'll be existing homes, not necessarily new homes, but,
Yeah.
but that's usually in, I think, the fire department's education, it's usually kind of couched with, you don't store it outside of winter that close to your house.
Yeah, so fire-wise, best practices, people stack wood on their porch, which they only get that during the winter time. They have to find out wood pile. You tell them during the summertime, they're like, to move that off your porch. Insurance will tell you otherwise. They won't write you a policy in January if they see the firewood on the porch, because they expect that you're probably not gonna move it, you use it. So, these are all things I tell people, because insurance is a big thing that I have to address, so they have to correct the issue. But again, I'm giving recommendations. Insurance is, you're gonna receive a check, you're not gonna what they're doing. They won't say seasonal like we do.
I'm not sure if you want to do something like that, Counselor Peller, and I absolutely hear that. I don't think our code has to match what the insurance companies say. That ends up being a property owner's choice in my mind.
Okay, since this is related to the development, could we require developers to create, if they create firewood storage, that it is in a fireproof?
I think that's what this is saying. I'm not, sorry.
That's okay.
You forgive me. I think that's, to me, that's how I read this, was that you're building a house, and you're gonna have your builder create firewood storage for you as part of that, and actually happened.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm caught up. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm good.
Well, it could also be, people use them in like solo stoves and stuff too,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So
I do.
not necessarily just at building time.
I'm a yes.
Just leave it as is.
Yeah, leave it as is.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Next.
Okay. Next section would be applying new standards to the areas extending beyond 30 feet and to the lot boundary. As you see in the table and on the screen and in your packets. This is a similar set package of standards that apply to the 5 to 30 feet, but different provisions. Certainly can walk through each one of these if you like. And perhaps we do that. First being tree crowns shall not touch. So this would allow for preservation of any trees, regardless of their flammability or listing. Just indicating that the crowns cannot touch and must be limbed up at least 6 feet.
Would it be easier for a developer when they see this to just take down the tree? I would be afraid that they would just do that and go, I don't want to deal with all this crowning and trimming. Is it cheaper for them to just take it down? And that's kind of not what I want.
In this area of a property, our significant tree preservation standards would apply. So any tree 8 inches or above DBH is required to be preserved if not required to accommodate the development. So if we're away from the structure, it'd be hard pressed to prove that you need to take those trees out. So they would be required to preserve them.
I mean, this is all part of the pretty common sense stuff that we've talked about within urban forest. So, I am not skilled enough, or knowledgeable enough to evaluate whether this is the language we should have, but I suspect this language comes from Firewise and from how you manage an urban forest. And it's some of what we've actually done on the outside of this building was not 30 feet, but so I'm okay with it as it's written because I frankly think that it's not going to apply very often and we're talking new developments, so I'm comfortable with it because of the significant tree code that we have.
So you're a yes.
I'm a yes.
For all of it, all the bullets?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, what was, for all the bullets, is that what you said?
All the bullets, yeah.
Okay.
Enclosed firewood storage in that as long as it's not within 30 feet of the structure. We already said that. Large accumulation of flammable debris, that's a hard one, but you can pick up some of the stuff. I can tell you right now that area of my house on the floodplain has got all kinds of those things in it. If I did get out of the book, probably did stuff off the ground.
I'm kind of a no, just because it seems like a laundry list of things that's all 30 foot away. I don't know.
I think the goal for me is that that's a non-managed space quite typically on a property, like it is on mine. It's not a non-managed space, it's in the floodplain. And that's an opportunity, if it's not somewhat managed, for a fire that's on the ground to get up into the tree crowns. That's the only thing, that's how I looked at it. But I hear what you're saying too, Michael.
I'm just kind of like,
I keep looking at my neighbor's yard and thinking it's a waste of my time anyway.
anybody else? Yes or no?
I'm a no.
I mean, I'm a yes, it's just standard in the industry. It's kind of boilerplate, so.
I don't mean to disregard your career or anything like that, but when you say those things, it makes me uncomfortable because I'm not reading that myself, like it, or being directed to anything. And again, I'm not disagreeing with you. It just makes me very uncomfortable to just say it's industry standard. I mean, there are lots of standards, like different standards that people look at, so.
I've heard two yeses and two nos. I'm just trying to keep scorekeeping so we can. No one's going to hold it against you either way. Just trying to get decisions done.
We're not voting, on approving it, the entire package through ordinance, whether or
It's
not.
going to come to us again.
Whether or not to write it up into some draft language for consideration.
With red line, and then we can say no or yes.
We can. It's all on us. So we might as well make some tough decisions kind of quickly and get through this, and we're going to see it again. This is not going to be the last draft.
I will say no.
Is there anything in here that you want to keep or not keep?
I'm glad you asked that, as I do think removing large accumulations of flammable materials would be something the developer does to clean up the lot.
I think the large key flammable materials, I was there as well, and the exposed firewood storage being allowed, but maybe I'm not too worried about that. Well, that's a long way to call you wood now. What about the ladder fuel one?
That's fine. Yeah, that's okay.
And I think I would be with those two, definite yeses. I think the first one is hard to quantify and qualify for a developer or anybody else without climbing the tree and taking out a tape measure. I mean, I don't know how you do it. I know
It's done, it's done. It can be easily done, but I understand it is confusing when you're not familiar with it.
I don't like the exposed firewood storage within 30 feet of any structures. Again, we have 10-foot setbacks on the side. That's just that's a little, it's just kind of hard to, it might be 30 feet from your house, but it might be 20 feet from theirs, and putting that on there.
I mean, again, they have the opportunity to put it in a structure or, some sort of fire-resistant covering or something like that, so.
So is it covered with the above B13, and we don't need?
It says a building, it doesn't say your house, it just says a building. So it is,
I mean,
it's covered in.
it's a catch-22, because again, it's that issue of, we can only control what's on our lot and ask politely of our neighbors, and then this business, that your house is only as safe as your neighbor's house. And we're all pretty neighborly here, so we try our best.
And you've got a flammable fence 5 feet from each house. So it's kind of,
Well,
to me, it's, I think it's onerous.
I think striking that and living with 3.7.300 solves the problem.
Just the last one?
In the section above where we said prohibit within 30 feet unless a fire-resistant structure, it says a building. It doesn't say your home, it just says a building.
Well, yeah, they are not contradictory, but they are two different standards, so.
Well, I think, let's get one, and, I think.
Okay, I just, just trying to think of the person who puts it 30 feet from their house, but then it's, 5 feet from their neighbor's house, and if you're that neighbor and you're staring at somebody's giant wood pile,
Yeah.
You're gonna feel pretty helpless at that point, so.
I feel pretty, I will stare at my giant spruce trees in my neighbor's yard and feel helpless, I get it.
So yeah, I mean, it can, there's no perfect way to do this.
I don't know how you could enforce that once the house is built and up, unless somebody calls and complains.
Yeah, that particular standard could be challenging if it's in the rear portion of a property, if it can't be substantiated from the street, the public right-of-way.
I mean, that could be put in the, yeah, I just think that would be challenging for, I'm thinking about our code enforcement officer. That would strictly be complaint-driven, I would think. And then it comes back to, you know, what does the word structure, building mean? So I look out my window and I see it 10 feet from my house on the other side of the fence. You know, we're talking about municipal code at some point, so we really, I think we keep crossing this line, in my mind.
Yeah, it gets a little fuzzy.
To me, the most important things are no ladder fuels and large accumulation of flammable debris, and the prohibited flammable plant list, 20-foot spacing from other trees, that may be hard to do, but if you're planting, you certainly can do that. If it's existing property, it may be hard to do. So those are the ones that are important to me, those bullets, bullet 2, bullet 3, and bullet 4. 1 and 5 I can live without. And I could even live without 2 in order to get 3 and 4. I mean, I could also not live without, well, anyway, I'm getting confused, but
Yeah,
the
so-
point is, there are parts of that that to me,
I'm just gonna still stay no.
Yeah, so it maybe kind of bring it back to, do we want to apply standards to the portions of property between 30 feet and 30 feet from a building to the property line?
I think the most important thing is remove large accumulation of flammable debris while you have the construction equipment there, because I can tell you right now, for me to do it, where it's been sitting down there for 15 years in the floodplain, would be very hard to do.
So looking for consensus on each one of these, so we can stay there on the large accumulation of flammable materials. If there's consensus, majority support for that. Not to prolong it, but we will need to identify what large accumulation means. And we could certainly massage that and come back with some language, some example language, because this is going to be an ongoing requirement.
Yeah, I'm not sure of what we do when it happens once and we're not continuing it. I mean, of course, I'd love everybody to go rake everywhere and clean everything out all the time. I mean,
Yep.
but,
Is there already requirements to clean up a site after construction? There already is, right?
But not necessarily ground cover under trees.
From a planner's perspective, this is not only during construction, this is ongoing. So for the, into the future, you're going to need to maintain your property.
Recording in progress.
Within this area, including the removal of the large accumulation of debris. Now, this begs the question, do we already have, and I haven't done that level of research, does our nuisance vegetation already capture that criteria? So that may be something to come back with to identify if we've already covered accumulation of.
The reason why
Recording stopped.
I like that they're in the development code, and I wasn't thinking beyond the construction, is that I put a pile of pine needles every year from my upper yard out on the street. This is the size of let's just say that I could park I could park my Subaru in front of it, and it was in front and in back of the Subaru, it was as high as the roof. And that's just from the lawn and the area above the floodplain. That isn't what's in the floodplain, which is 3 times the size and 7 times deeper than whatever I take out. So for me to get that out would require somebody coming in, a professional with equipment to haul that out of there, and I'm not even sure I could do that in the floodplain. So having that done as part of the construction process to get at least that level of material out of the property. So you start from ground zero, that's a better solution than 20 years accumulation of material, which is what I'm sure is down there, or more. Since the last time White just flooded on my side of the stream.
All right, do we want to go through these bullet points one by one, or do we want to just let Matt take a stab at them based on what we've talked about?
I can do one of multiple things.
I
First
would like
being,
to keep number 4.
okay. So I think we need to establish, is there, I guess, a majority or a consensus that we want to apply standards to portions of property 30 feet from a building to the property line? I have 2 no's. And then if so, then if we have 3 that support the concept, then we can work our way through these 5 bullets.
I think we can have some, I would vote for some standards 30 feet and beyond.
And I would vote for some standards 30 feet and beyond.
Well, let's whip through the list.
I think we're at 3 now. So first one being tree crowns not touching.
No.
No.
No, don't support that. Limbed up at least 6 feet, clearance from ground.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
No ladder fuels under trees.
Yes.
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 Trees on the prohibited flammable plant list must be 20 feet spacing from other trees or groups of shrubs.
I hate that because of the spacing. I just think
Yeah.
it's so problematic to try and have tapes and think,
Is it from the trunk, or is it from the?
Right.
The
I
spread
think
of the
I think
tree?
it's just a little
Well,
wishy-washy.
Yeah, usually, sometimes it's done by drip line of the tree, which is
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah, that's
of
what I
the
meant.
crown.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously for planner reviewing permits, they're going to want something exacting,
Yeah.
like a number and a distance, right? I mean, just for you to be able to do your job well. And so,
I think if we let them do their job and not try and specify, because there's different standards. Again, remember when we were grouping trees and
Yep.
they're considered one group and some, I think it's kind of just, it's too
Well,
specific.
or do we just say trees on the prohibited flammable plant list are not allowed?
Anywhere on the property.
No, I'm not for that.
I'm not with that either, but I just thought I'd throw it out there.
well, it's an option.
Sorry.
Not for all of us. It's not an
No.
option.
I'm a no for bullet 3.
And I am definitely on the fence, so I would probably, to move the process along, would say no.
Yeah, I just don't want to get in a situation where there's like 7 very flammable trees 30 feet from a house,
Yeah.
either. It's,
I hear
If
you.
it becomes a
Talking-
problem in the future, we can always revisit this, right? And make changes.
yeah, it's just,
I mean,
it becomes a problem when somebody's house burns down, because there were 7 junipers 30 feet from their house, so, I'm trying to prevent that, but, I mean,
Well,
I
throw-
mean, I understand, and I want to keep this moving. I understand the confusion around it. It's a standard that I'm familiar with, just in my world, so. And it's something that,
Well, and I
we work
agree-
with developers all the time.
I want to say that I
with these
appreciate your
standards.
putting it in, but I think that when we look at this, we have to think about where we are and what is doable within the timeline. And, if I had my way, there would be no flammable trees in the forest of the town, but that's not going to happen. We have a lot of spruces, a lot of other things in this town, and they're going to stay. We're not going to be able to get rid of them as much as my chainsaw would like to.
Recording in
And
progress.
so, I just think that that's a hard one for us to enforce and figure out. I know that we have to think about where we go. So I guess that, I literally on the fence. One side of me says yes, one side of me says no. But in order to move it along, I probably would say no.
Okay, firewood storage.
Oh, remove large accumulations of debris.
Oh, sorry.
And I'm a yes on that.
that's fine.
Yes.
I'm a no on the firewood storage,
In general, or including those on
we already
adjacent
have the
lots?
one above it. I think that's good enough.
Okay, how do you feel?
I think the one good enough is, the one we have above is good enough if we continue to say a building. And that gives some ability for code enforcement, but.
It says, that's all it says, it's a building.
It
so
doesn't, yet it doesn't say, it
you
doesn't
mean
say
other
the house,
people's
it says
property,
the
I
building.
guess.
Yeah,
So that's fine.
that's how I'm interpreting that. Now,
Okay.
I could be wrong when it comes down to it, but
Okay, is that enough, Matt?
Yes, so I incorporated the
Two and-
limbed up, 6 feet, and no ladder fuels, and
Large
removal of large accumulation of debris.
There you go.
Next being 300C, this is unique standard, includes requiring roofing to be Class A. This suggestion is to remove or relocate the requirement of the Class A roofing.
to where?
We could look to municipal code. We have an existing provision that may be an option. You know, it was incorporated considering it as a design standard. And it's, I don't see any harm with it being here, but I understand that it may seem out of place because we're talking mostly fuels and vegetation management versus building materials.
You know, and this is funny, I'm on the building side of it, and he's probably right, but I like it that it's in.
Well, I don't mind having it in more than one place. I want every roof in this town to be Class A or Class A.
I think
We
this
have
shows that
two.
we're serious about it.
Yeah.
And I'm coming from the building
Yep.
side of it, and I think it shows that we're serious about it, and even though it's kind of a design standard, and maybe it is a little out of place, I'm okay with that.
Right, so then,
I am too, by
because
the
the
way.
wording of it originally was a little weird, so we need to revisit that a little bit, because it says where 50% or more of a structure's roof
Yeah.
area is
Well, that's
replaced
the-
within a 5-year period.
Yeah, so that's the existing part that we're not doing anymore. So we're just talking about new construction, it's gonna be Class A.
Right.
And
Okay.
then we'll revisit that and
Yeah.
figure out how to make that not be so clunky.
Yeah, because it was the 5-year that made me clunky, but I wanted to be
Is
sure.
this true?
Yep.
Do I have that right?
I
Since
remember
we've
that.
taken away the addition portion and the deck portion,
Correct.
now we're talking about new construction, it's gonna be Class A, period, end of statement. Here we
And-
go.
And
I'm good with that.
that is,
Whether it's located there or wherever it fits the best, I'm not gonna tell you where to put it.
That would be in building hardening too, right?
Yeah,
right,
but it can be
And
in
then-
more than one place.
So
Do we require a permit for new roofs, a re-roof, or?
Yes.
We do.
Yeah, building permits required for re-roofing. I believe it comes down to the 50%.
Okay.
Is what, where
What
that's
a-
triggered, but I would need to confirm that.
Okay.
I mean, I think we'll make sure that we word this right in the existing part.
Yeah.
If we're talking new construction, I'm good with this.
Yeah.
And again, you guys as staff have your professional discretion to say, it just doesn't fit here, and if that's the case, let's take it out. I don't care.
And at some point,
As
I
long
want
as
to
some-
visit that 50% language, but that's another day and another dollar.
and
So
also,
We're
or-
only talking new construction roofs, so, 'cause the part we removed before had to do with the decks and 200 square feet plus additions.
Right.
And so I just want to confirm that if there's, like my house is just, I'm not changing the structure of it at all.
If you're re-roofing it,
If I'm re-roofing it, like, that's
that could be covered.
that's not new construction.
But that's
I'm ju-
covered
I'm
in
just
other
trying
part
to-
of the
that-
Correct. In the municipal code, there's a prohibition on shaken treated shingle roofs.
Thank you.
So that,
Thank you.
at least we
Very
get to a level of, I would need to double check if that rises to Class A. I know, so. But
and I
there's already that protective measure there.
and I want to throw out that this also applies to, I'm assuming, any other structure on the lot, like a shed or an ADU or anything like that.
If it's new, yeah.
Yeah,
Applies to,
right, and I don't know if we need to clarify that or.
so at the introductory statement, says it
Okay,
it
great,
refers
thank
to
you.
all buildings,
Check.
including accessory structures. Okay,
We're gonna keep that.
Yes.
Okay.
Oops, I spoke
Okay.
for everybody, so I can't-
Matt had suggested this might be a good place to stop since we're pushing 8:30. And we have a few other things to do tonight, so how does everyone, including Matt, feel about that? And what would our next steps
Yeah,
moving
I-
forward be?
Yeah, I think the suggested changes to the minor modifications and the exception criteria are just whether or not it should be incorporated or allowed. It's not details of the language to evaluate. The one that I do want to get to before we close is the changes to the prohibited flammable plant list. We could certainly revisit the modification and the exception language.
I'd be comfortable with seeing the modification, minor modification language as a red line for us to look at that time. So we have the existing code and we have the red line so we can actually do a quick comparison.
Sure.
For me personally, and I'm not questioning how you did it, if this whole document had given me this red line, I could have probably gone through it a lot easier and really seen where the changes were. Because the back and forth is where, during the discussion, where I break my concentration and I have to go back and figure out where I'm coming from.
Yeah,
I'm not telling you how to do it. It's just that red line for me is a lot easier to really interpret and say, yes, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I respect that, and some lessons are learned, that I didn't want to be too presumptive that the council would be supporting those changes, and enough changes to particular sections that it just wouldn't look right.
Right. And I appreciate that, and
And it would have been 27 pages or something.
yeah, so I do. So just, at least, I think these last ones, with the exception of flammable plant list, is a red line I'd be comfortable with seeing that. So we don't have to have a red line and then an additional red line after we talk about those.
Yeah, and in large part, it's whether or not it's a good policy to allow those exceptions and modifications, so it's not necessarily the language, but.
That's where Gary Ross is, that's 1 of 5.
Where are we at?
Well, I was suggesting we move past the minor modification and exception sections in spirit of time today, but it would be valuable to know on the flammable plant list if the inclusion, the addition of not allowing ornamental grasses like kale, forest, or bunch grasses, and then on the tree side to remove from the list, specifically ponderosa pine and western larch. So that would allow those species to be retained.
I can make it easy on the trees, I'll say yes. That's allowing pondos.
I'm a yes on the tree.
I'm a
yes.
yes on the trees for sure.
So
I need to think about the grasses a little bit.
Yeah, I have some comments on the
Yeah.
grass.
So maybe if you redline the grasses, we're okay on the trees.
Yep, I'll make the changes to both, and we can consider them.
One more time.
So procedurally, I think the next step would be a motion to continue deliberations to a date and time certain. Next meeting is May 13th, if there's looking
I move
for
to,
agenda room.
I have
Continue deliberation. Oh, no.
Yeah, you're fine.
Sorry, 14, excuse me.
14th?
I
Go ahead.
move that we continue deliberation on May 14th.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Does anyone have any questions about that or concerns?
No.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, check. And that would be for file TA 25-01, for the record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry.
This is how we party.
Why, there's 5 of us to make you miserable.
All right, next up, we have other business. Item A, appoint one member to the Budget Committee. Budget member Tom Bollinger. Am I pronouncing that correctly? No, Tom Bollinger? Who's the person who's leaving? I'm just reading the script. Is that, I just want to pronounce his name correctly. All right, Budget member Tom Bollinger resigned on March 11th, 2025, and as he has moved out of town, Budget Committee interview panel has approved Blaine Stockinger as their next choice candidate.
So you appoint them.
Yep, so I am going to appoint Blaine Stockinger to the Budget Committee, and his tenure will expire December 31st, 2027.
Poor guy.
Good job, Blaine. I know Blaine, he's good.
It'd be good.
Great, okay. Well, we're excited, and he's coming in at the exciting time, so I hope he's ready. Next up is response to prior meeting comments. Jordan Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you. We had a couple comments at the last meeting. First, Mr. Dickens, he also commented tonight about the issue with the building code issues with the county. I have spoken with Mr. Dickens in the past about this, just a few months ago. I have checked in with the county about the status of that issue. Since my last conversation with him, nothing has changed in terms of the options that are before him. In fact, the simplest path is a structural permit to resolve the unpermitted issues there at that property, and then an electrical inspection that he can choose on his own behalf to pull in an electrical inspector. I think the permit is $158, and then, yeah, they just need a license and electrician to inspect the work. So, not to get too much into it, but I have been in contact with the county. Staff have met with Mark a couple weeks ago about his property and other opportunities for development. He is in the floodplain, so there's some challenges. I think he mentioned that. But development staff has met with him on that. And then we have informed our legal counsel, because he did bring up the lawsuit question. And from what we can see in the IGA, or the memorandum of understanding on building department services that the city contracts or has the county do on our behalf, there's they're in charge of enforcing the building codes and resolving these code issues. So that's where that stands. I'm happy to give Mark a call and just reiterate kind of what I heard from the county and what those options are. And then Steve Swisher commented. Swisher commented about the school district, looking at their real estate and just the interest in this area being, public functions and a public campus, and kind of talked about the historic nature of that building. And it's probably continuing conversations with the school district. I know they have a meeting coming up where they'll be talking about that a little bit more with their broker and with the board. So we'll continue to pay attention to that and get updates from the superintendent.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
You can say okay. We're all okay. All right, thank you. Staff comments.
I'll just roll into it here. We've been working on the budget, plan to get the budget books out on May 7th. So that takes a lot of time for key staff to put together those spreadsheets and work with Joe and getting our narratives and all that together. So thanks to staff for all their work on that. The Civic Leadership Academy met again this week. They're up and running, so they've had 2 meetings now. Another fantastic group. They're working on the idea or the topic of engaging younger community members in civics here in Sisters. That corresponds with the city council goal around youth engagement. And so they're on track to present their report to council in June 11th. We're continuing to work with the sheriff's office on the IGA negotiations. We are still expecting to be able to bring something to council in May 28th. But we will be meeting with them again next week. The Houselessness Partnership Group, someday to be named something different, but we'll roll with that. We are working on plans for a second community meeting. Schedules will continue to be busy this spring because there is a couple different community meetings I think that are going to be coming up. So we're looking in the June timeframe for that. And that's to get feedback on the action plan that the group has been working on since the last community meeting. So we'll have more information about that after the partnership meets again. There's been a subgroup kind of working on the public meeting. Moving on to community development. The Arbor Day celebration or tree planting is Friday at 10 o'clock at Creekside Park. We'll have the gathering and then walk over to do the plantings of the seedlings. So this is our 18th year being a Tree City, USA, right? And yesterday was Earth Day, if I'm not mistaken. All right. Then coming up on Thursday, we have the UGB Steering Committee. That's going to be discussing the draft preferred alternatives. That went out to the steering committee, the agenda and the agenda packet. It's posted if you haven't seen it, but it has some graphics and information about those preferred alternatives in there. The Planning Commission, City Council should be on your calendar now. We'll review that on Thursday, May 15th. So that's gone out for a hold on that date. That will be a busy week, I'm sorry. May 8th at 5, speaking of the week before that, May 8th will be conversations with council, sorry, right? That's Tuesday, May 8th. May 6th, sorry. May 6th, and that's at the barn. And I think we have, yes, a couple counselors slated for that.
Yeah, I'm out of town, so I was going to do it.
I see a cider in my future.
Yes, that would be okay.
After hours.
So I mentioned other community meetings coming up. We have the Northwest Park Master Plan that's been kicked off, working with NV5 on that. They're currently doing stakeholder interviews. That's starting now and talking to agency reps and community interest groups. And I think we're targeting the week of May 20th, 22nd for a community open house. Another open house there. But that would be on the Northwest Park over by the Woodlands.
Jordan, could you say those dates again? Which week was that for the open house?
The open house for the Northwest Park Master Plan, we're looking at May 22nd.
Okay, thank you.
And then there was a couple dates floated, but it would be sometime in June for the houselessness community town hall.
May's looking gnarly.
Yes.
That's why I'm fleeing to North Carolina.
Yep. Did we know that?
About that. Okay, Public Works. You've seen that Barclay is under construction. It's on schedule. Thank you, weather. Things are going well there. Transportation Hub
Asphalt.
has been poured. So next is striping, lighting for the parking lot. That's scheduled for this week and next week. I think Paul was meeting with the painter to get the restrooms painted and refreshed. That would be done next week as well. So getting really close on that. It's nice to see.
You mean the
the
Giddy Up and
pathways
Go
paved.
building?
What's that?
The Giddy Up and Go building.
Giddy up and go.
You might call me naive, but I am amazed about how many trees are still left on the property, and everybody was a little hamstrung about how many trees were being cut down, and it still looks great.
I agree.
I think it looks great too, and it actually opens it up a little bit too, and it just feels a little safer, but also wooded. But yeah, with that
I think it's
pathway, it's
awesome.
looking great. West Side Pump Station, there was a pre-bid meeting yesterday with a packed lobby here in room. I think 13 contractors were here.
Wow.
And those bids are due on May 14th. So good to see some interest there. The roundabout landscape design, we have an initial concept design that's been developed, and then there's meetings with the property owners here happening also in May, the week of May 12th. You've seen some striping that's been done on Cascade, and I think ODOT's been busy doing some striping on 20 as well. So next will be on the side streets here in downtown, to fresh that. And then what else? We had a pre-con with Knife River. And so they're the ones that the council awarded the contract to for the overlays. That's scheduled for June 2nd through the 4th. So a lot of work happening around town. And then we're also waiting, we're getting a scope put together. I think Paul had mentioned at a previous report about the North Locust corridor improvements, some safety improvements here to kind of tie it in with the roundabout and all the enhancements here. But we are proposing to fund that with the ODOT Small City Allotment Grant. And so we'll be submitting that, and I think that's up to $250,000. So fingers crossed that we can secure some funds to do that project. Any questions?
I just want to compliment the crew out there sealing every day on the road. That's not the most pleasant job, but they drive by the house 3 or 4 times. I'm always knowing they're there.
Yeah, you can smell it. Helps it's not too hot, so, yeah.
Tried to get them to do my driveway,
Right.
but they wouldn't do it.
Okay, Any counselors want to chime in on what they've been working on lately? Cheryl?
Yeah, I attended the Urban Forestry Board meeting, and they're actually going through the Urban Forest Management Plan that was written in 2022 to familiarize themselves, because there's some new board members on that. I think it's a really good exercise to be going through that. I just happened to be, since we were talking defensible space and everything, I was out looking at Firewise certification, and familiarizing myself with that. And I was really pleased to find that we have 5 communities within city limits that are Firewise certified in good standing. So this was really, I was glad to see that, and I'd like to see a little more around educating communities and HOAs on Firewise certification. And then the mobile employment resource van was at the job fair, and Matt Olson from COIC said that they had job seekers of all ages attend and experience, and he made several connections with the other employers, and he will be returning. So I'm happy to see something happening there, and hopefully the community will take advantage of that. That's it.
Gary?
The Parks Board is gone to bi-monthly meetings, so we have nothing to report at this time.
That's it?
That's it.
All right. Michael?
Had a local EDCO SCED board meeting last week. Mayor was there. Weren't you? You were there, right?
Yep.
Yeah. We had a strategic planning session kind of deal. Even though the strategic plan is fairly new, the regional board went through the process just a couple of months ago, so we went through the process locally again, just to touch base on the things that are happening in town. And we did a lot of dot exercise and you know, what's important and what's not, and I think we're going to get a lot of fruit out of that. But it was a good little meeting, and had a lot of the people all around town attended. Superintendent was there, and just a lot of people from all over the place, and it was nice to see. Other than that, busy, you know, got UGB tomorrow. Mayor, you'll be there for that as well, right? So that, I think that's probably the biggest meeting of the rest of the month, to be honest with you. So that's about it.
For the whole next week.
Yeah.
For the rest of the month.
Rest of the month.
The rest of this week. Sarah?
Let's see. I went to the fire event by the Sisters Camp Sherman Fire Department last week, and really, I mean, it was well done, and Matt was there presenting, and I appreciate that. So if anyone wants to let him know that out of here. But I got a new term, HIZ, Home Ignition Zone, which they said was the same as defensible space, but for those of us who are just coming on board with all these terms, I don't know, it sounded like we're going to hear that one more. Let's see, Gary and I went to the Civic Leadership Academy on Monday. We had a very good time. They all liked us very much.
They liked you more.
Yeah. No, it was a great group, and I can see that, yeah, it was very fun watching their conversations and them interacting with each other. I see good things ahead there. On Monday, I'm going on a safe parking tour to Mountain View Community Development in Redmond from 2 to 4 with Eric Strobel. If anyone wants to join us, just let me know ASAP. Rick just needs to know what size vehicle to bring. Let's see.
What date, when's that? Monday?
That's Monday, yeah, the 20-somethings. And then I just saying it out loud here, Jordan had mentioned it for the May 14th meeting, we might have a conversation where he had sent 2 weeks ago, maybe the links to take the ICS 100 and 700 classes. And it sounds like it might be useful for us to take those ahead of before that conversation, just for terminology, things like that. So anyway, I just made a note of that.
I'm happy to send those links out again, and maybe some more resources too.
Okay, cool. That's it.
Thank you.
And I'm going to just quickly add, because I forgot about it. It was very interesting, and it's a very interesting group, very diverse. And I don't know if they're more diverse than the previous group was, but, you know, you've got young people, you've got a high school student, you've got some older folks. You have a good group of folks that are, definitely want to be involved in the city that are younger. And everybody from a high school student to the cook at the barn and everyone in between. So it's, well, I liked the group and I had great conversations with those that I had a chance to speak with during the brief time that we had.
And I think we need to, long-term, think about doing this again next year and the year after and the year after. I think it's part of the reason that Sisters is special. And, you know, if we can keep finding grants, and you know what, even if we had to pull a little bit out of the general fund, I think that that is money well spent.
And I would say that I spoke to someone, and I said, well, you know, I said, these are the sorts of things that lead to city council. That's what I plan on doing, so. So we already got some future counselors in that group.
Was that Will, the 16-year-old?
No, I didn't have a chance to speak to him.
Yeah.
You know, he was pretty quiet.
Cheryl, you're there last, so you're going to have to bring him home.
I guess so. I will.
Thank you. I also got to attend the first CLA, and that was great because that was the one where they're all introducing themselves with like the 2-3 minutes. So just fantastic to hear 12 amazing backstories. I mean, it just never ceases to amaze me how interesting everybody in our community is. So happy to participate in that. Did the SCED meeting with Michael. He addressed that, attended the wildfire preparedness fair as well. I spoke at the C4C Wildfire Forum a few days before that on behalf of the city. Then that was really well attended, and frantically dragging out more chairs right before it started. So that was a good event with a good panel, some familiar faces of council here. I also attended the Community Wildfire Protection Plan kickoff meeting. Our plan dates from 2019, supposed to be kind of updated every five years, so we're behind on that. So that's more in the county's court, so they're going to do most of the lifting on that, but, you know, we will be participating. Attended the Deschutes County Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee annual summit. That was really well attended as well. And our next regular meeting will be hosted here in Sisters on May 1st, May Day. It's open to the public, 12 to 1:30. Anybody's welcome to attend, and when we do road shows on that, we usually have staff present on what we're working on locally, or what we've been working on over the last year. So if anybody up here in the community wants to attend that and listen in, they're more than welcome to come.
Will they have a maypole?
Well, maybe afterwards. We can just all spin around that one out there. Attended the Opportunity Knox mixer, which was kind of, I think, our first Opportunity Knox event in Sisters. And most people I met there were from Bend, but that was still fun to meet some interesting people. Jordan and I attended the tabletop exercise done by the various fire agencies in Central Oregon this afternoon. So just good to kind of listen in on, if anything, the continuing and remarkable partnership that all of our varying fire agencies have in Central Oregon. We're lucky to have that. Attended the Central Oregon Area Commission on Transportation, the COACT meeting, mostly about, talking about the ODOT funding package, and kind of the need for that. Also, the plan is to get more of our decision-making authority back to these teams. That was kind of shifted away to the state level a few years ago, but the plan is still to really bring that more to the local level, so these teams will have more say in dollars spent here. Also had a meeting with ODOT staff on access to Mackenzie Pass 242 for off-season use, particularly, bike and pedestrian use, and which was really great. They're continuing the conversation with us and a few community members on that topic. They could have just said no and walked away, and they haven't. They keep digging into some options, and we're maybe looking at having a couple of permitted events next year, maybe late May, early June, that they said they'd be happy to help us out with. So trying to just drive more tourism in off-season on these off weekends before summer hits. So that is promising. And Jordan and I know, zoomed into Cocoa.
Monday.
Yeah, it was just a parade of all the different bills trying to get chewed through right now, and an update on water stuff, which is, complicated. It's not getting any less complicated, but our team, you and everybody's working on that, so, and I think that's it for my updates, so. I will adjourn this meeting and then re-adjourn for our URA meeting in